What did Vaush say or do to prompt that? What she just said there? I'm curious about that. Today is a glorious day, my friends. Today is a day that this brings joy to my heart. This really does. I only read one little paragraph of this, the very first paragraph, and what I read from it just set my heart aflutter. Because, for one, great content. You guys, listen, a lot of you guys are here for this shit, all right? And I'm not gonna lie, the higher viewership and all of you guys being in chat and stuff is certainly an up and a positive for me. I ain't gonna lie, I ain't gonna pretend it's not. On the other hand, though, I feel like this, these continued examples of obsessive bad faith towards the group of content creators that I inhabit, being so evident over and over and over again is just so vindicating. Every single time I get to do one of these videos or cover one of these things, it feels so vindicating. These creators whose bullshit and bad faith representations used to be so well respected and well received and completely unchallenged are now actually receiving pushback from like a substantial part of the left, and I gotta say, makes me happy. It really does. And our newest example of a obsessive, bout of bad faith is Kat Blaque's new I Shit You Not. Let's see how long it is. Not obsessed, by the way. Yeah, that's pretty long, huh? It's a 44-minute read. We're going to be listening to her reading it, so it's like listening to a podcast almost. And I'll also be scrolling down to show the relevant images on screen, and we'll be pausing it every once in a while to, talk about what's going on. I'm actually going to open it in another tab so that I can play the audio on one side and then scroll on the other one, just so I don't have to keep scrolling up and down just to pause it. So, Kat Blaque put out a blog post, Black in the City, The Musings and Adventures of Kat Blaque. That is pretty clever and a nice concept. I'm okay with this. What my spat with Vaush taught me about being a black woman online. And the cherry on top, the cream filling, the carrot on the cake has to be this picture. No picture could have been better chosen. I think that's her. With like a red tape over her mouth, and then like the red tape has like Vaush's logo like in like embroidered in it, or sort of like overlaid into it. And the implication, I guess, of the imagery is that Vaush and his community are the force keeping black women silent online. It is great, and she made this. She spent a while in Photoshop making this, right? And she spent a long time writing this. This is all after that tweet thread. After all of this, everything that's happened, we're getting the fucking Cope 44-minute long schizo post. I was gonna call it a schizo post in my thumbnail, but I thought, or not in my title, but I thought that might like get people mad at me. But like that colloquially, that's like what this would be called by most people, and it really is just insane. It's too long for a lot of you guys to actually like read or listen to on your own. I know that because all of you guys have been sending me this and asking me to cover it because you don't want to cover this yourselves. So I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to be covering it. My boy Vaush is currently recovering from his ears being frozen off. So I guess he's not currently at good enough health to defend himself from these slanderous claims. So I'm going to completely altruistically, for no benefit of my own whatsoever, come out and defend my friend here. I promise you I gain no other benefits whatsoever from covering this. But no, in all seriousness, we're gonna cover this shit and we're gonna have a good ass time. All right, let's begin the read along.
I started a YouTube channel in 2005, which means I've been a YouTuber for most of my life. Growing up,
Wait, it's not even her reading it. It's a how do you get a TTS thing that reads out things in your voice? Oh my god. AI voice is getting so fucking advanced. I'm so scared. Oh my god, I'm so scared. I'm so fucking scared. Like deep fakes and AI voice, I'm so goddamn scared. I have to like get my bag and retire before that shit like gets to a certain point. Like I feel like there's gonna be a point where like celebrities are getting questioned by the police for super realistic deepfake videos and like getting canceled for ultra realistic deepfake. Like before that becomes indistinguishable from being real, I need to not be a celebrity anymore because like I just don't. I know I'd be a target for some shit like that. You can't. Let's not pretend like I'm not one of the top list figures to be a target of some shit like that. That kind of stuff scares me. Holy shit, it's actually 10,000 words? Wait, you didn't know it was actually... No, people weren't exaggerating when they said it was 10K.
I felt very isolated in my community. I was one of the only black kids and one of the only openly queer ones. This made me feel very alone, so I turned to YouTube to vent about my frustrations at school. My classmates often considered me to be one of the good ones because I didn't act how they assumed all black people did. I remember going out of my way to distance myself from all of the negative images they associated with blackness because it felt good to be accepted in a situation where I was one of the few. They'd say stuff to me like "you're so well spoken" with a subtext that made it clear they weren't expecting me to be. It would take me years to unpack that specific type of anti-blackness, but long story short, it encouraged a certain degree of respectability that to this day is still a central part of how I move through the world. No matter how much unpacking you do, sometimes old habits die hard.
This part right here is what made me realize I had to cover this. What a disgusting thing that she's about to do. Let me just use my mind powers to predict what she's about to do. She's about to equate the feeling of being feeling pushed as like a POC person in our society to conform to the whims of white people, because white people naturally are the majority power holders in this society. She is going to try to make that the claim that, you know, obviously, you know, many POC people have had to do that in their lives. She's going to try to compare that to her, I guess, previously not having been anti-Vaush. That she had just been she had been this whole time trying to be a pick-me for the online left so that Vaush's community would like her. I almost guarantee she is going to try to equate these things, and that is just fucking disgusting. Absolutely fucking disgusting to me, because that is a real problem. Like, particularly black people in this country, especially black women, because there are a lot of problems that black women specifically face when it comes to professional fields, are forced to conform their everything about them to the whims of white people. It is a massive fucking problem. I'm not like the only one who's heard about this, right? Like, this isn't like I'm not speaking into the void here, right? But like, it is a very well-known thing that, especially in like professional settings, that like black people are forced to like change how they behave in order to like suit the whims of white people. It's a very well-known problem. And I feel like trying to equate that, which is a real fucking issue, the idea that like to be professional is to act white. Yeah, white normativity or whatever. Like, that to equate that to my not being a psychotic, misrepresenting, dishonest, bad faith, terminally online asshole on the internet, my not doing that was being a pick-me. That is disgusting. What a disgusting like comparison to make. What a pathetic weaponization of your own like oppression for like points against another YouTuber in interpersonal drama online. Jesus Christ.
10 years later, in 2015, my YouTube channel went from being an emotional outlet to a very unexpected career. After graduating from animation college, I realized animation wasn't what I wanted to do, so I turned back to blogging and started using what I learned in school to make more elevated YouTube videos. When I graduated college, my goal in life was to be stealth. I wanted my transness not—
Hey chat, do you want me to like highlight over where we are on the text? Will that help you guys follow along for those of you guys that are better with subtitles? Because I know some of you guys are perhaps hearing impaired or subtitles help you follow along. Would you prefer if I trailed the mouse along or just left it as it is? That would help? Okay.
to be at the forefront of my life and simply be known as I am now. I was in a relationship with a man with a very conservative family and living deep in a very conservative part of Orange County. Stealth was, in many ways, safety for me at the time. But as I pursued YouTube as a career, I had to accept that stealth probably wasn't going to be a possibility for me anymore. My channel was small, but I had a dedicated following. One day a YouTuber I admired whispered to me that I could be a mainstream transgender YouTuber if that's what I really wanted. I wasn't sure if it was, since being mainstream has never exactly been a focus of mine. However, when I sat with it for a while, I realized how desperately I needed representation when I felt isolated in my small town. Representation can be so powerful, and there weren't, and still aren't, many well-known Black transgender YouTubers.
Sure.
I realized that I had not just the foundation, but also the privilege to be able to put myself out there to help others, and so I started making more elevated content about transgender issues. However, being stealth meant that transphobia was something I often spoke about in past tense. Those conversations were important to me, but especially living in a predominantly white area during the beginning of Black Lives Matter protests across the country, race quickly became a more important topic for me. So, I started creating more content about racism. Pop feminism was at an all-time high in the mid-2010 seconds, and I had a job at Everyday Feminism creating YouTube content that educated folks about the various things I embodied. This would get the attention of the anti-SJW crowd, who would make a career out of responding to my content. Harassment has always been a complicated topic for me, as a person who started a YouTube channel as a suicidal teen. I've never known a time on the internet where I wasn't mercilessly attacked for who I was, and when you have been dealing with that for most of your life, it becomes easy for you to build thick skin around even some of the shittiest behavior. I don't conflate criticism with harassment because it's part of posting things online. However, what I started to recognize was that these anti-SJWs were almost never criticizing arguments I actually made as much as they were criticizing the angry Black woman avatar they made me out to be. Quite frequently, they would argue I was advocating for the opposite of the kind of society I was advocating for.
Yes. In fact, let me bring up a very good example of the way that Kat Blaque would be framed during the anti-SJW era. Where is it? Oh god, I hope Chris Raygun's not still watching. He might cringe to death here. He's not going to be happy about this one. He's not going to be happy about me showing this one. He's going to cringe his ass off. Yeah, boy. All right. This image is 2014 to 2017 bottled up into essentially one thing here. So we have quite the lineup here. I believe this is Steve Shives. Not sure who this is. I don't remember who this is. I do remember who this is, but I don't remember the name. This is Kat Blaque. This is how, let's get a zoom in on that. Let's see how the anti-SJW community like to frame Kat Blaque in particular. I'm gonna say, by the way, I have seen a small spoiler in regards to what Kat Blaque has to say about Vaush's community and the anti-SJW community in comparison, and she does end up making the argument that the harassment and derision and racism that she's received from Vaush's community has far surpassed that of what she received from this community, the anti-SJW community. So I just want you guys to look at this image, and I want you to remember it. Oh, look, we have unfolding ideas. Oh, Peter Coffin right here. Oh yeah, the fake girlfriend thing. Yeah, we just a whole thing here. Blair White, there's Andy Worski and his friend Sargon, Seanhead, Armored Skeptic. I forget who this person is. Dave Rubin, the Kekistan flag. I forget. Jeff Holiday, or Jeff Holiday, I think his name is, right? Yeah, Jeff Holiday. Matt Jarbo, I think his name is. I'm bad with names of those creators. And I think this is Mr. Epsilon. And yeah, and there's oh god, this is Ian Miles Chong right here. That's a bad one. Whew. What else do I recognize here? Hey, notice how none of only like 4 of the people here on this list are even recognizable anymore. Like only Unfolding Ideas, Peter Coffin, Steve Shives, and Kat Blaque on this list are like anyone's that anybody knows about anymore. Have you heard of any of the other people on this list other than Unfolding Ideas, Peter Coffin, Kat Blaque, and Steve Shives? You might not have even heard of most of the other people on the left side here. Obviously, there's Lacey Green, but she's not being framed as like an SJW, clearly. Unfolding Ideas is based, though. I'm asking you guys, is there something about this maybe indicative of like, yes, the anti-SJWs were in the wrong? Maybe the majority of like the popular left-wing figures not being any of the people that were once framed as being insane by the anti-SJWs to a massive audience. Maybe there's a reason why none of these creators ever ended up making it, besides having been unpopular when the right was popular. I don't know. The thing that I'm bringing up is that the online left back then was quite cancerous and toxic. It was very cringe. Does not justify the actions or the propagation of the right, but the left did have a big problem when it came to like messaging online in general, especially if we're comparing the right's ability to message their ideas and the left's. It still is. I mean, it still does have a problem with that, but like 2016 or 2014 to 2017 was the online left was Tumblr. The online left was pretty much Tumblr and like Reddit communities and like Facebook groups. Like it wasn't what it is today.
Being Black and transgender has meant that my life has not been an easy one. I have spent most of it fighting to simply function and provide for myself, and that's hard in a society that not only doesn't understand you but seems averse to you. I'd like to think that the content I create is about encouraging a more understanding and empathetic society where the experiences I've had because of who I am are less common. Because of what I've experienced, I don't believe in supremacy of any kind, and I certainly don't believe that justice would be the marginalized wielding the same power as the privileged to oppress them in an equivalent way. I'd like to exist in a society where our differences are celebrated instead of being used to justify oppression and mistreatment. People who were actively listening to how I voiced my worldview understood this to be my position, but anti-SJWs would quite frequently twist my advocacy against white supremacy into an anti-white sentiment.
So, Kat Blaque, back in the day, did do things that were justifiable, like definitely had some criticism like worthy. The problem is that the anti-SJW community was incapable of levying valid criticism against a creator like Kat Blaque. Any problem, like generally the kind of problems that most in the anti-SJW community would have had against her would have been dog shit. The problem that I have here is this like implication that Kat Blaque, by default, is always in the right. And now Vaush's community, or this whole like dirtbag left, however she wants to frame it, the debate bro community or whatever, she says she's going to claim, or seems to be alluding to, and I've seen a few spoilers to this, so I do know the general themes and the general point she makes in it. She is going to claim that Vaush's community and what we've done broadly as like debate bro figures is essentially the same thing as what the anti-SJW community did to her, just taking a new form, which is very ironic. A 44-minute audiobook, cat girl, what the fuck? Listen, all right, shit. Listen, so far, okay, to be clear, because I know the points that she makes in this whole like post, like right now on its own, nothing she said has been a problem. I want to make that clear. If you're watching right now and you're like, what, and you're like, damn, Zane, you're like really going off on Kat Blaque right now. Like, it really feels like she hasn't said anything wrong. Why are you like, what are you doing, dude? The reason why I'm doing that is because like I have been following this from the beginning of it happening. I was there live when this all started to go down. I've been covering it and following it all. I've also had the points and the arguments that Kat makes in this video spoiled for me. I read a little bit of it, like I read like the first 2 paragraphs, and then I also talked to some people who did read it, and they told me like the points that she makes and whatnot, and knowing the points that she's leading up to and seeing how she's setting them up, I'm just getting ahead of it and pointing out what she's setting up. Though I understand that for those of you not like aware of that, it may come off as me being extremely, extremely uncharitable. So let's just get that out of the way really quick. There's a lot of context to this that justifies my being a little bit rude here. There's more context to justify this than just what you're seeing here. And I will make it very clear, on its own, contextless and in a vacuum, what we've seen so far I have no issue with it, okay? Everything she's written so far, completely agree with. Completely factually accurate to what I remember from that time, and the rest of it's just her expressing her feelings and talking about her upbringing, things that I completely am willing to believe. My problem is what she's going to try to... She's just describing her oppression right now. She's describing harassment and oppression she's faced in the past right now, and I don't disagree with it. My problem is that I know, because of spoilers, that she's going to now use that as a starting point to try to compare that to Vaush disagreeing with her. Oh, God.
The most frustrating thing that would happen back then was that these anti-SJW creators would take something I said, edit around it, and make it sound like I was saying something terrible and indefensible. For example, I once made a research-based video about how the Irish were treated in America. The gist of what I said was that while the Irish were treated poorly, they were not under chattel slavery the way black slaves in America were. I was incredibly careful in my wording because regardless of context, I see the act of owning and exploiting a human being as incredibly immoral. And I've always made that clear. One blogger took that video and twisted it into the message that I thought slavery was peaky keen as long as the slaves were white. To this day, This video is one of their top videos. It didn't matter that...
Whew! Alright, we gotta talk about... Kat Blaque is right here. Oh my god. Okay, one of the big reasons I was also really excited to cover this is because it lets me talk about the way that this kind of content happens. So basically, what they would do is push this narrative. They were really obsessed with this narrative that actually, if you have a real understanding of history, Irish people were treated just as badly as black people were. And that means that there has been oppression against white people based on their race before, which means the complaints of black people aren't quite as valid, I guess, would essentially be their justification. Zan, your audio clipping is a little bit... Okay, I'm just going to turn off all of the filters, and let's just hope I sound fine. Yeah, so they were really obsessed with the idea that white people have been oppressed for their race, because they genuinely did want to feel oppressed. They wanted to feel sort of a... there's a reason why that War on Boys PragerU video was so popular, and that was because a lot of teenage dudes like myself wanted to hear a woman tell us how oppressed we were. And, it's just how the fucking cookie crumbles,
That I never said that and would never say that. There was an audience thirsty for content attacking feminists and women of color. Then other bloggers would repeat the same exact misrepresentations of my ideas, and the lie would get bigger and bigger and bigger. My channel was small back then, so these creators, who were almost always white cis men, were able to establish and define my arguments to their much larger audiences, which of course meant that my channel would be overrun with comments demanding that I answer for my supposed anti-white racism. Most annoying of all, some of these creators wanted me to go onto their channels to have a live debate with them to defend the arguments I never made. Debate is an interesting subject for me. I've always valued conversation over it, at least how I've seen it online. I'm an atheist, and I was very much...
By the way, when those figures said, come on and debate with us, what they meant was come into a call with 15 other conservative content creators where we're going to call you a pedophile and scream at you for 30 minutes until you leave. That is literally what that actually meant. That era of debate online for the right was the blood sports era. It was all about who could insult the other the most. It wasn't actual debates weren't really going down back then. Go watch the debates that Destiny did against those people if you want an idea of how those debates would have gone. There is a massive difference between Kat Blaque turning down a debate with somebody like Sargon or Andy Worski or insert right-wing anti-SJW YouTuber from 2016, number 487. There is a very distinct difference between Kat Blaque refusing to do that and Kat Blaque refusing to even have a private adult conversation about a disagreement with another left-wing figure and then for really no reason, outing the previous sexual encounter that had happened between you, the sexting thing, for no reason, out of nowhere, and then continuing to talk about said thing and coping about it for weeks on end. Like, clearly these are very, very different things, okay? There's very different... Yeah, like, these are not comparable.
Much part of the online atheist community in the 2010 seconds during a time where debate dominated atheist conversation online. No one is more of an obnoxious debate bro than a self-proclaimed militant atheist in the 2010 seconds. I promise you. I listen to the Atheist Experience every week. I'd tune in to hear Matt Dillahunty and his co-hosts debate with theists about religion, and I got a lot from those conversations because they were so focused on the ideas being shared. Less so who was sharing them. I could be misremembering, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember there being much of a cult of personality around Matt, Tracy, Russell, or Jeff. They were normal people who dedicated their weekends to a public access show where they discuss and debate ideas.
I have no idea what that's referencing, probably way before my time.
I didn't know very much about their lives or really who they were beyond the show, and while I appreciated their argumentation, I did not adore them as these godlike figures. I was a fan of the show, not necessarily them. These conversations being had over the phone meant that aside from a few repeat callers, I didn't really care about whoever was on the other side of the line. The format meant that the ideas were central to the conversation, and no one was really trying to enrich themselves financially from them. They had these conversations because they cared about advocating for atheism, and most of all advocating for a separation of church and state.
That's a strong claim to make about a group of people. I mean, it's a public access thing, so maybe they didn't make money from it, but like, where are we going with this now? Are we about to get a monetizing this type of content is questionable take? Are we getting that? Is she going to pull the you make money so you are bad take? I don't think she's going to outright say that making money from talking about these things is bad. I think she is going to say something that heavily implies it. Because if she outright says it, then she's a massive hypocrite. So she's just going to heavily imply it. Yeah, like what Lonnie said there, yeah. She's just going to heavily imply it. It's the painting the silhouette essay technique. Yes! Leo, thank you for reminding what that means. Painting the silhouette. She is essentially forming the outline of the argument without saying the argument. She's saying everything but the argument. So it's like we have a dotted line outline of the argument she's about to make, and she's going to fill it in at the very end. I already know the filled in argument that she's going to make, so I'm like calling out each dotted line as it pops up. But yeah, that is such a fucking perfect way to describe it. Thank you. Holy shit. Leo, I'm e-hugging you right now, and you didn't even give me money. You just said a smart thing.
Then something changed. I'm not exactly sure when, but these conversations slowly became about winning, or PWing as we called it back then. Other figures emerged and capitalized on shifting social media trends, and suddenly we had these online creators with fan bases and curated images. Most of these creators were white men who would have conversations with random Christians on live streams, similarly to the Atheist Experience, but with entertainment being the focus. What this meant was, at a certain point, people were tuning in less so to hear arguments against theism, and more so to listen to these atheists absolutely obliterate their opponents with facts and logic. There was a certain degree of bravado in all these conversations, and they would often become repetitive and masturbatory. These figures would sit on a stream with a self-satisfied smirk on their faces, and they'd argue against what was frequently low-hanging fruit. The conversations became repetitive, and so many of these channels would branch out, and quite a few of them became prominent anti-SJW channels. Some of the very ones that made misrepresenting me their job. For years,
she's not wrong about debate live stream content. It is very repetitive and tends to attack low-hanging fruit quite often. The problem is, just saying that in a sort of rude tone isn't an argument. Saying debate content is just self-righteous, masturbatory, ego-stroking, where you full of bravado and owning with people with facts and logic, like, just saying that in a really, like, rude tone isn't an argument. You need to explain how this type of content is harmful. If this type of content is being made, and it is being made to push people to the correct positions, well, it's not really the same thing, is it? As like what example she was bringing up before. Not to mention, You can't really do this argument when Vaush initially reached out to her in private saying, I really respect you and I like you, so I want to talk about this in private so it's not like a whole public thing. I want to talk about like adults and stuff. And she made it public, leaked the DMs, and then continued to have a public mental breakdown over it. She can't get around that. No amount of like trying to logic bro her position like is going to save her from the fact that her behavior was unacceptable. And until there's an apology, I mean, nobody's going to listen to what she has to say until she acknowledges what she did was bad. There is no justification for the weird sex stuff. Leaking private sexual encounters to the public is a cringy thing to do. She is literally the person this criticism should be levied against, Sanderhall? Absolutely, yeah. She's the one who publicized their disagreement and leaked private DMs. When Vaush tried to reach out and have a private conversation to sort it out in private like adults, respectfully, she was the one who made it a public debacle because she wanted to send her audience against Vaush. She needed the self-validation of her audience telling her she's right, Vaush is wrong, Vaush is an evil, horrible fucking debate bro, and she is based and perfect, and she is the queen, yada yada. That's what she needed to hear. That's why she made that public. She wanted to hear her audience that she knows would only treat her with nothing but positivity and would do nothing but back her up. She wanted to hear her audience tell her how victimized she is and how in the right she is. Xander Hall, okay, but didn't she already apologize? I've yet to see an apology, and she has done nothing but doubled down, okay? She's also lied and signal boosted people lying about what happened. I'm sorry, your apology doesn't matter if you then, after the fact, lie about the course of events to try to make yourself sound better. Kat Blaque and her defenders have tried to push the idea that her bringing up the white dick thing was in response to Vaush, like, talking about himself and her. Literally all Vaush said in response to somebody from the chat after Kat Blaque, with no prompting from Vaush, leaked the publicly leaked like the sexual thing. Somebody in chat sent Vaush like screenshots of the of Kat Blaque talking to Professor Flowers and them talking about their mutual phase of being interested in white bearded leftist men and how they'll yada yada yada. And Vaush was like, "Damn, fucking racists love to fetishize the opposite sex. It's like why racist white guys love interracial cuck porn." And Kat Blaque then goes on to tweet, and then he also says like, "Yeah, racist black women love white dick." Does not say anything about himself or specifically them, but it's in brief reference. But clearly, like, yeah, they've really tried to twist it in a weird way. Go back and watch like the highlight clips from that stream, because the events of it are all pretty laid out well there. And I saw it live and we covered it. So, I mean, there's that. But still, like, they've really tried to change up the line of events to make it seem like Vaush had like pushed it enough to make Kat Blaque's response not as bad as people are making it out to be, quote unquote, which is not true. She has, even after whatever apology you're claiming she's made, continued to try to obfuscate what actually happened to make herself look better. If you're lying and misrepresenting the truth about a past drama, even if you apologize for it to make yourself look better, that doesn't sound like you're very sorry, does it?
Years, it seemed like I was their favorite person to pick on. I ignored most of it, but it still got to me that they were able to so easily establish me as having ideas I simply did not have. I have very few pet peeves, but a big one is a confident belief in something untrue about me. I don't really take issue with someone criticizing my actual ideas or positions, but so often, I felt like I was forced to address and clarify arguments I never made. For years, people called me a black supremacist because I once made a joke on Twitter to a white nationalist about his fear of mixed-race children. People like Phil DeFranco would cover the story and spread this misrepresentation to, quite literally, millions of people who confidently believed I not only hated white people, but thought I was biologically superior to them.
You know what? Respect to Kat Blaque for calling out Philip DeFranco. Philip DeFranco does the reporting for his show pretty well, but Philip DeFranco himself is kind of a dumb fuck politically, or at least when it comes to his engagement. He is not very responsible. Back when do you guys remember the New York Times article about the alt-right pipeline? Well, they made an article about it, and the way that the article worked was when you watch when you click on it and you scroll down through the article, the background mosaic of different content creators pulled from the watch history of Caleb Kane, Faraday Speaks, who the story was about, kind of like slowly fades out, and the figures that are less radical fade out before the figures that are more radical. So like the final figure that's like meant to fade out, the final figures fading out in the mosaic as you scroll down are like the super Nazis or whatever. So for like 2 days when the article first came out, even though the article itself says that Philip DeFranco is a apolitical left-leaning news YouTuber news outlet, that's what the article actually says about Philip DeFranco. There was a bug in the mosaic imagery that made it so that Philip DeFranco's image was the very last one to disappear in the fading mosaic. But not only was it the last one to disappear, it didn't disappear at all. It stuck there and was glitched out. So if you scrolled down the page, Philip DeFranco's picture behind the text is still there the whole time, glitched out. It's like so obviously a glitch. And then Philip DeFranco had a meltdown on Twitter about it, claiming that the New York Times was accusing him of being a far-right, like, radical neo-Nazi. And I made a video about it back in 2019, like, Philip DeFranco, irresponsible, some shit like that. How could the guy whose job it is to report the fucking news be so irresponsible that he can't tell that clearly the mosaic tile fading imagery that clearly broke and glitched out, and that clearly the New York Times isn't claiming that Philip DeFranco, on a list of people that includes James Alsup and fucking JF and Lauren Southern and Stephen Molyneux, that Philip DeFranco, that New York Times thinks Philip DeFranco is the most far-right one there. So much so to the point that they left his picture on the screen for the whole duration of scrolling down, even after all the rest disappear, and the image is now clipping through the text and making it illegible for like 2 days before they fix it. Yeah, obviously that's what they were claiming, Philip. Yeah, Philip DeFranco, not exactly as great of a guy as many of you think. He's got like this very like nice dude, chill, kind of normal guy front persona, but I mean, I don't hate the guy or anything, but like nobody is actually who Philip DeFranco pretends to be on camera. I'm sorry, guys. There is not a person on earth that exists who is actually the person Philip DeFranco pretends to be on camera. Nobody is like that. Nobody's personality is like that. Nobody is like that. Like even on podcasts when he's chilling, like, I don't know. You made a negative video about him a few years ago. I forgot what it was about though. It was about what I just talked about, regular dude 313. That exact thing, the New York Times thing. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. That video got so much fucking hate too. So much fucking hate. The whole BetterHelp fiasco. Yeah, I'm seeing people sponsored by BetterHelp again. And it's like, wow, I guess everyone just totally forgot about that, huh? Like, people were legit having to make apology videos for being sponsored by BetterHelp like a few years ago. Christ.
No one criticized the white nationalists sending me hate, just my response. There's a side of the internet who believes that I think a man looking at me for too long is rape because I made a video about rape culture where I described a man stalking me on my way home and trying to invite himself into my apartment. Quite frequently, I found myself derailing the conversations I wanted to have to clarify that I didn't hate white people or cis people or men. I couldn't actually just talk about what I wanted to talk about. I had to obsessively worry about how anything I could say could be easily taken out of context, and this became quite overwhelming. Perhaps that was the point.
Oh my god. Oh, I could never imagine what that's like. Constantly having to watch everything I say to make sure that crazy conservatives don't think I'm saying that I hate all white people or that cis people are bad or that gender isn't real, and constantly having it. Oh, by the way, doing it live, completely improv, no do-overs, completely live streamed. If I fuck up, anyone can clip it and post it on the internet to cancel me. Kat Blaque, you did prepared content. You can write your scripts. Oh man, I can't relate to that at all. That is literally the constant struggle I'm dealing with every millisecond I'm on stream. I literally have like a supercomputer going on in my brain right now, detecting every sentence I'm about to say to make sure nothing I say would, one, get me canceled, two, could be used to misrepresent my point, three, could be misinterpreted to make people think I mean something I don't. Because you guys in the chat, as you know, based and cool as you guys are, because you're Xander Hall viewers, you're not mind readers. I have to be very careful with what I say, because sometimes I might say something and the way you guys interpret it is different than the way I meant it. And that is my fault a lot of the time, because I was incapable of wording the feelings that I had sufficiently enough for you guys to understand what I felt. And that can lead to some pretty stressful scenarios. So I'm constantly going over everything I'm about to say in my brain to make sure that the feeling I'm about to convey to you guys is as well spoken, as well worded, and as well communicated as possible. And it's difficult. It ain't easy. And his supercomputer still broke on dick talk? True.
I started to think maybe it was my approach. Back then, most of my videos were scripted in under 10 minutes. Sometimes when you're trying to be concise, but comprehensive, you can sound declarative. I figured that maybe that's why people thought I was such a dogmatic person. So, I invested in a teleprompter and started speaking more freely and less stoically. I wanted to be more personable and welcoming. I thought that would make it less likely that people would misrepresent me. In so many ways, that worked, and my channel grew quite a bit. However, I'd leave my relationship in 2017 and embark on a new journey to the city where I would try hard to find the person I lost in that relationship. Now I was 27 years old, living in the city for the first time in my life. I was overwhelmed, but this felt like the right path for me. I was finally in a more diverse area with the sorts of people I wanted to connect with, and in many ways, I changed pretty drastically as a person. With that being the case, I felt like I needed to take a break from YouTube, so I didn't upload a new video for an entire year. During that time, I really tried to re-examine what I was doing on YouTube, and if I'm being honest, I became frustrated with the fact that I could devote so much time to researching and scripting videos, just to have some white man wave his hand over it, misrepresent it, and establish to the world what I actually meant. This pattern had a way of causing me to doubt myself to the point.
Notice how she keeps saying cis white man. It is relevant to a discussion about the harassment she faced by the anti-SJW community, but she is going to draw the parallel of Vaush is also a straight white man. That is a comparison she is going to set up. She is unironically going to set up the comparison of, well, Vaush is also a straight cis, well, not straight, but listen, as I've said this a million times, to Vaush haters on the left, Vaush is straight when they need him to be, okay? To them, Vaush is straight when they need him to be, okay? You understand what I mean by that, right? Despite the fact that Vaush is openly pansexual and has talked in arduous detail about his gay sexual encounters, they will still frame him as being straight because the way that he presents himself is not, I'm going to be honest, the way he presents himself is not stereotypically homosexual. And I'm sorry, but even gay people on the left are subject to the biases instilled in us through cultural stereotypes. I'm sorry, gay people can also be homophobic when they see a gay person that doesn't fit the stereotype society has instilled in them. It's possible. So society instills deep ingrained, internalized bigotry in us all. What makes us woke is not the lack of that bigotry. There is no lack. You can't have that lack of bigotry. It's instilled in us by our upbringing and our nurture, no matter what. It's not like maybe as insidious or violent as like traditional racism or bigotry that you would think of, but it's still there. You still have these biases and these stereotypes that are sort of in your mind. And, I think that being able to recognize them is what makes you woke. Knowing they're there and trying to account for them is what makes you woke. Not being under the self-righteous delusion that you're the main character who somehow doesn't have those internalized biases. Nobody doesn't have them. You're not the main character. You're not perfect. You're not the fucking chosen one of the left. You have these biases. Stop lying to yourself. They are there. You are not actually woke unless you recognize that. I'm doing the woke scolding now. I'm doing the gatekeeping now. I am the true last SJW. Destiny was stolen valor. He is not the last SJW. I am.
Where I really started to question if my videos were as bad as people seem to make them out to be. To this day, I watch some of these videos back and it's crazy how concise, polite, calm, and non-confrontational they actually were in retrospect. I didn't want to bend to the pressure to stop creating content, but I had to examine what would be healthy and stable for me. So
This is untrue. The vast majority of this type of content was not calm and respectful seeming, okay? I watched this type of content, and the stuff that was popular was the most sensationalist and most angry, loud equals funny, fast-paced, and intellectually dishonest content possible. I'm sorry, is she whitewashing the anti-SJWs? I'm sorry, are you defending teenage me? Because teenage me would have been such a shithead to Kat Blaque. And the content that I would have watched, I didn't recognize Kat Blaque until I became like a lefty, so I was not aware of her back then. But if I was, I would have definitely been watching all the meanest content dunking on her. I watched all the meanest content dunking on Riley Dennis and Milo Stewart, two of the biggest targets of harassment in regards to pro-trans content creators on YouTube, especially respective to their like sub size. And I feel so bad about that. Like, for one, I've talked to Milo Stewart. Milo Stewart is like one of the coolest people ever. Milo Stewart is awesome. Also, they bought some stuff off of Lonnie's Depop, I think. Lonnie sells jewelry and like clothes and stuff on a Depop store, and I think they bought some stuff off Lonnie's store, so that was pretty dope. Milo Stewart got it so bad. I remember going to their channel, seeing they had 30,000 subs or something like that. This was a couple years ago, so they're probably bigger now, but like they had 30,000 subs back in like 2020. And I was like, wait, how many subs did they have back when they were the target of all the harassment from the anti-SJW community? And I went and I checked Social Blade, and it was like 15K. Milo Stewart, one of the biggest targets of these YouTube channels, some of them ranging like from like ranging all the way like from 1 million subs to hundreds of thousands of subs to tens of thousands of subs. All these channels all took their shot at Milo Stewart. And Milo Stewart had like 15K subs. Talk about inflating a straw man to build a fake boogeyman of the left. I like really. For one, nothing Milo Stewart said or did was bad. Two, even if it was bad, Milo Stewart was not a large enough figure to have any significant effect that even if it was a bad effect, that they could justify as being worthy of getting all the harassment that they received from it. Like, I don't know. God, that stuff kind of pisses me off.
Figured if they couldn't trust me to faithfully narrate history, maybe they'd trust me to faithfully narrate my own life. So, my work became more personal and less political. For the most part, this worked, and my channel grew pretty dramatically, but YouTube had changed quite a bit since I was gone. In my absence...
Wait, is she saying that her channel getting bigger and doing better is because she stopped making videos about political topics and started making videos about her life and experiences? It's possible her more like story and personal oriented videos are just more popular among her target demographic audience, but like maybe it's also popular that during the same era, the left was gaining a large resurgence online due to the evident dumb fuckery of Donald Trump, the growth of content creators who are able to completely revolutionize the idea of what it is to be a left-wing content creator, such as ContraPoints, Philosophy Tube, NH Bama Guy, And of course, finally, even outside of YouTube, there was the prevalent growth of the left there as well. Figures like John Oliver and his segments were getting now millions of views when they get uploaded on YouTube instead of a few 100,000, and going on the trending page all the time. Even the like mainstream left-wing figures were getting bigger and more popular. Trump did bring a lot of attention and growth to the online left, and it served sort of this polarizing effect. I hate to admit it, but yeah, it did serve this polarizing effect. Yeah, that is a really good picture of ContraPoints. That is true, Space Karen. But like, regardless, it had like a really weird polarizing effect that sort of, despite the fact that Trump was in power, the left started to grow in its prominence and in its popularity more than ever. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the effect that, and I know some of you are going to get mad about this, but like, when PJW said that conservatism was becoming the new punk rock, he was wrong objectively. He was correct subjectively, though. A shit ton of people saw it that way. That was the way that conservatism was being framed. People like Milo Yiannopoulos, people like him were being propped up to frame conservatism as this new hip punk rock thing. The alt-right was meant to be the new right wing for young people. That was what it was being seen as. The alt-right was supposed to be the right wing for young, hip, trendy people. Not that those goddamn tradcons, they don't know what's up. The alt-right, that's the hip, cool shit to be a part of, though. I'm wording it poorly, but that was the way that it was framed early on. It's hip to be a racist, huh, fellow kids? Well, nobody knew it was racist yet. Well, lefty people knew it was racist. People who knew about politics in the left knew it was racist, but like, anyone who wasn't like politically aware, they didn't know. The dog whistles work on them. They're the ones who dog whistles were made for, because it all goes over their heads until they're ready for it not to.
Since several left-leaning creators had risen to prominence, and as I was figuring out what I wanted to do when I returned to YouTube, their content was certainly inspiring to me. It seemed like being an anti-SJW slowly went out of vogue, and left-leaning content became more polished and entertaining. While I admired this content, it also stood out to me that many of these creators were essentially saying the same things I had said but being received in a vastly different way. All of these creators were white and had
Let's listen to that bit again. Let's listen to that little bit again.
And less political. For the most part, this worked, and my channel grew pretty dramatically, but YouTube had changed quite a bit since I was gone. In my absence, several left-leaning creators had risen to prominence, and as I was figuring out what I wanted to do when I returned to YouTube, their content was certainly inspiring to me. It seemed like being an anti-SJW slowly went out of vogue, and left-leaning content became more polished and entertaining.
Here's the part I want you to pay attention to.
While I admired this content, it also stood out to me that many of these creators were essentially saying the same things I had said but being received in a vastly different way. All of these creators were white and had, at least on paper, more radical politics than I. They certainly received criticism.
Do I smell jealousy? Okay, to be as charitable as possible, YouTube does favor cis, het, white, male creators by far. And the less oppressed checkboxes that you have, the better off you're probably going to be trying to pursue a career on YouTube. I'm not denying the existence of that bias in both the algorithm and the YouTube viewer base. However, I feel like, to me, this is Kat Blaque trying to muddy the water a little bit. Kat Blaque wasn't disliked by the broad majority of the people on the internet who knew about her solely because she was a left-wing trans POC creator. That's not why she was getting harassment entirely. A lot of harassment was because of that, but she did do things and say things worthy of criticism back then, as she's admitted here. And it feels as though perhaps she's not willing to admit that the I'm going to outright say it. The preachy, stick up their ass, stuck up, high horse way of presenting left-wing ideas that was popular back then just wasn't popular. Or popular among like left-wing figures, not among anybody else. That was popular with them back then wasn't popular among anyone else. No one liked it. Do you guys remember Adam Ruins Everything? There were so many massive videos made to dunk on that guy. Adam Ruins Everything is a perfect distilled, I feel like, is a perfect distillation of the tone of what left-wing content on YouTube and online felt like in that time. Have any of you ever seen Adam Ruins Everything? For the record, he plays a character in that. I know that the person doing it isn't actually like the obnoxious piece of shit that he comes off as. I know he's doing like a character, but like if you've seen it, the way that character that he plays, the know-it-all, stuffy, smug, soy boy, like kind of presentation, I actually kind of liked. Of course you guys liked it. Most people don't. A lot of people don't. And that stuffy, smug presentation was ubiquitous among left-wing content creators in that time. And it was so easy to rip on, so easy to make fun of, and so easy to just pick at without making any real arguments or actually attacking the substance of what's being said. And that was the big difference. A ContraPoints video doesn't feel preachy, does it? It really doesn't. Do you ever feel like you're being preached to or like you're being high-horsed by a ContraPoints video? No. The point gets across. I'm convinced that she is correct. And yet at no point does it feel like she's trying to imply she's better than me because she's correct and I'm wrong. The closest you can really get to that is probably the men or the incels videos. And those ones are all just like kind of jokes. H-Bomber guy. Memes and meta-ironic humor. Not much high horse. I mean, he'll like embarrass himself on camera for his videos if he thinks it's funny. Not much preachiness or high horsiness from that. I mean, I guess maybe philosophy tube videos are preachy, but the presentation is so good that like it's hard to say that her videos have the effect of seeming smug and preachy. I mean, like when you're putting that much effort into your video, you know, it's like it doesn't come off that way. Like clearly this new generation of content creators, something other than they're white, especially since ContraPoints, H-Bomber guy, and Philosophy Tube are all white. But do you think maybe there's something else about their content compared to Kat Blaque's that made them succeed? But Kat Blaque's channel is comparatively in the dust, despite them, you know, having very similar histories. The difference is presentation. And it's not that they're playing pick-me's or anything. It's that they understand that coming off as a presentation, it's not that like you have to be a pick-me or anything. It's that you can't come off as smug or like preachy or like you're framing yourself as being better than the people who are watching that disagree with you. You can do it if you have the online persona for it. Like Vaush does that pretty often, but his online persona and the precedent he set as an online content creator is just what you expect from that. People are cool with it. And I'm willing to admit, some people are okay with certain behavior that men do, but when women do it, they aren't, because of misogyny, internalized misogyny. It's common. I am firmly of the belief that a lot of the shit that people hate Demon Mama for is due to that. I've seen people shit on Demon Mama for stuff Vaush has done dozens of times. Vaush gets no shit from it, from the left, and then Demon Mama does it, and she gets a ton of shit, and people say she's insane. And like, even like I feel like the framing is often one rooted in trans misogyny. I'm not saying all criticisms of her are invalid, but it feels like a lot of the crazier stuff comes from there. I'm not denying that's a real thing or anything.
But I noticed how frequently that criticism was actually engaged in their ideas. not usually misrepresentations of them. There were certainly grifters who did that, but even when being criticized, they were often complimented. While I love these creators, I felt compelled to make a video called Why is LeftTube So White? And in that video I expressed my frustration for how differently our content was received. To be fair, my content was certainly different than theirs. What was technologically advanced in 2015 was certainly outdated in 2018. I have always been more experimental and lo-fi than these creators, and I was still figuring out what I wanted to do. So, this wasn't a conversation about how I wanted more subscribers or how I was personally disappointed in my own success. It was about how differently our content was received, even by the same exact people who used to misrepresent my work. It was bizarre seeing people who used to send their audiences to dogpile me applaud a white person saying the same things I said, but with bisexual lighting. In my video,
Wait, why does Kat Blaque get away with shitting on the bisexual lighting? I literally made this point about essayists. I made this point about video essayists and how people on the left are fine listening to whatever somebody with their little bisexual lighting has to say in their video essays. But once it's like a live debate thing, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, must not, yeah. Yeah, damn. Even Kat Blaque shitting on the bi lighting. I'm declaring war on bisexual lighting. I'm going to be the only one with it, okay? I'm claiming it for myself, all right? Just like all things, I, a straight cishet white man, repeated a few things there, am going to appropriate something from the queer community and make it only for me, following the tradition. That's nice.
I actually broke into tears because I was processing the very real impact this had on my mental health. I had just spent months researching for a video essay I was creating about the rebranding of white nationalism, and those caustic ideas were still in my head. It made me upset that I couldn't simply state that fascism was dangerous to me as a black person and have people believe that to be true. It seemed like the only way I'd be heard is if I won.
Yeah, if you want to make videos on the internet to convince people of things, you have to say more than, like, you have to make a better argument than what these people are saying hurts my feelings. Like, I'm really sorry, but like on the internet, what these people are saying is hurting my feelings is not a good enough argument. If you're trying to make like persuasive content, what kind of content are you trying to make, Kat Blaque? Is it persuasive content, educational content, entertainment content? All three? It depends on what you're going for. If your goal is persuasiveness, you're going to have to figure out what type of presentation is the most persuasive. If you're going for education, then persuasiveness isn't necessarily an issue. It's the ability for the content to educate. If you're going for entertainment, then all those other things aren't as much of an issue. You're going for entertainment value. You can incorporate all three things in somewhat equal measure into your content. That's what I try to do for my content. But to do so means that the other three are going to suffer to an extent. It's hard to make your content educational, persuasive, and entertaining. Because, unfortunately, educational content is not propaganda. And persuasive content is. You can learn true things from propaganda, but propaganda is not education. At least it's not proper education. You should be taught the truth of things explicitly and overtly. Learning about the racism, like learning about American racism going back like from slavery to today in the prison industrial complex, like that is not propaganda. That is simply education. That is learning what happened, teaching evolution and how it happened. Not propaganda, simply education. Teaching that racism is wrong is propaganda because you're trying to convince somebody. It's not bad propaganda. Propaganda is a dirty word to a lot of people, but in and of itself, it is not a bad thing. My content is propaganda. My content is meant to educate and persuade you towards certain positions and to entertain you. Thus, by that logic, it is technically propaganda. Just because the arguments I make and the positions that I hold are correct doesn't mean it's not propaganda. It, by definition, is propaganda. I would be a dishonest hack to claim otherwise to you people. Like, I don't know why I said you people. I feel like that was so mean-spirited. Jesus. I would be a hack to claim otherwise to you guys. Like, of course, my content is technically propaganda. Propaganda and its moral goodness or badness is based on context and what it's actually pushing and whether or not the arguments rooted in said propaganda are actually true, correct, or will have a positive outcome on the world. The problem is Kat Blaque's content back in the day felt like propaganda. ContraPoint's content, PhilosophyTube's content, and H-Bomber's guy's content doesn't feel like propaganda. It just doesn't. It feels like entertainment and or education. Whether or not you arrive at the correct position doesn't really feel like it mattered in the minds of these creators when they were making the video. It feels like they were making the video and, well, I mean, all of it's out there on the table. You put the pieces together. And most people, I think, are capable of doing so pretty well. If you're looking for propaganda, like overt propaganda, that's like telling you what to believe, you go to like debates, you know? That's the full-on stuff, like my content, right?
Once again, changed my content and theatrically spoke about how fascism scared me. I resented the idea that I'd have to do that to be heard, and in the back of my mind, I knew that still wouldn't work. Ironically, the fans of these creators would come to the comment section of that video and say that I was simply jealous of the success of these white creators. They overlooked what was said and assumed that my video was an attack against them. Many of them didn't even actually listen to the video.
I'm sorry I did spoil myself a little bit for this. I do wish I hadn't spoiled myself for this. I feel like even if I did cover this with no spoilers whatsoever, I'd be able to predict everything she's about to say anyway. But yeah, she is jealous to a degree. There's no, listen, okay? There's jealousy. All right? The fact that she's preempting it now means that she's expecting people to call her out for jealousy. It feels projecty, like projecty, like she's projecting. It feels like she's projecting.
In full until the creators I spoke about asked their audiences to hear what I was saying. I resented the idea that I could, once again, devote all this time to clearly communicating my thoughts, but the only way they'd listen is if my work was first presented to them by a white person. It felt like whether it was misrepresenting me or hearing me out, viewers couldn't process my work unless a white person framed it for them, and that was extremely hard for me to handle. I could not believe that despite very clearly naming and stating my—
You know what? We need to just like shout out fucking POG, POC, trans, LGBT creators in my community more. I've been doing it a lot, but we need to like go fucking turbo on that shit. Because like for completely unrelated reasons, like it feels like some of the larger POC lefty figures have ended up being kind of shitty for completely unrelated reasons. Like FD Signifier is a dumb shit when it comes to the debate bro content. Kat Blaque's gotten into all of this. Like, there's not many other large black lefty creators. Like, the only other example I can think of is T1 Janitor, and he's cool. But, like, he's not as popular as any of them, is he? So, like, he doesn't even have that big of a platform. There's Shark, but Shark is, like he's not that big either. He's growing, but he's not like up there either. Shark deserves hundreds of thousands of subs. He's entertaining as fuck. I watch Shark's content all the fucking time. He's one of like those streamers that I can sit there and watch for hours. But like, wait, chat, are you guys being racist? Can you wait, chat, why? Wait, chat, stop being racist. FD Signifier and T1 Janitor are different people. Are you guys like, chat? Granted, you guys also say every white guy with a beard is Vaush, so maybe it really is just you guys are just like that. Yeah, I like, to be fair, all of you guys do literally spam literally Vaush every time a somewhat like hunky white bearded guy, God forbid, has glasses, especially. Like, if the guy actually looks like Vaush a little, you guys lose your fucking minds. You guys remember Brody from Life is Strange 2? Hunky? Listen, I want anywhere from, like, muscular to a little chubby. The same effect kind of happens, you know? Even muscular dudes with the beard and the thing look like Vaush, like anywhere ranging, you know? It's the meme. He couldn't guess Morgan Freeman. That's just unacceptable. Though, to be fair, I've always been a big Morgan Freeman fan, even though, oh God, oh Lord, do you guys want to see the dumbest fucking take on race ever? By the way, Kat Blaque would say you should listen to this take on racism over my take on racism. Morgan Freeman on racism. God, maybe this might be like, obviously this is from 2005 and is like old as fuck, probably not representative of his current beliefs, maybe, I don't know. And it is a short clip taken out of context. The right used to love this clip. And the reason why they shared it around is because it was a prominent black man that they could try to use as a representation of black people to say, see, this is the real base take on racism. Get ready to cringe.
Black History Month you find
Ridiculous.
why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, well, come on, tell me.
Well,
Every
I'm
other
Jewish.
month?
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
No, I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
This does cut a little dramatically for my liking, so I'm going to take a wild guess that the boundless surges of conservatives who clipped this video and shared it around probably clipped it a little bit dishonestly, perhaps. I'm open to that possibility, but if what we saw there was representative of Morgan Freeman's current held or even past held belief on that, super fucking cringe take. Stop talking about it. Stop acknowledging that the societal concepts of race exist. Black History Month is bad because Black history is American history. Okay, so for one, yes, Black American history should be being taught as base history courses, period. But in our current political climate, unfortunately, especially with all the CRT bills being passed, Black History Month is like essentially the best way for white students to learn about, like, you don't even learn much about racism. Like, do you want to learn, or do you guys want to know how I learned the Rosa Parks story? Let me sum up how I was taught the Rosa Parks story. Rosa Parks was a black woman who was sitting on a bus towards the front of the bus, which black people weren't allowed to do, I guess, and refused to stand up. And then she was arrested for it, but then let go because she didn't actually do anything wrong. That was what they told me. And that she then became a massive celebrity and influential figure who was instrumental in the abolishment of segregation. And that's about it. That's about it. That's about all they told me. That was it. That was it. I didn't learn about Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail until I was in high school, and I had to do a report on it for English class. In my homeschooling stuff, because it was like a state education STEM, or not STEM, what's it called? The Common Core curriculum thing. I've never read it. Well, I've read it literally so many times on stream at this point that you probably picked it up through osmosis at this point. All right, let's watch this shit or listen to this shit.
My issues, that people still believed what I was complaining about was clout. What confused me about the accusation was I very much struggle with the idea that clout should be the goal of political conversations online. This feeling has made the phenomenon.
Wait, is this not demonstrable or a perfect demonstration of the difference in our goals then? The goal of Kat Blaque is not to make the ideas that she holds popular or agreed with. I guess now we have our answer right there to the question. She is not interested in making persuasive content. She wants to make educational content. The problem is the topics she's trying to educate people on are highly politicized and contested, and she's making them on a platform that's extremely polarized on these issues. And so she's wondering, why is my content that makes very little effort to argue in favor of the ideas I'm trying to educate people on, why is my content not convincing people and getting so much pushback when content made by people who are making content that's made to have a good presentation that will be convincing to people is having that effect? It feels like there's a disconnection there. Like, maybe the fact that Kat, or so she claims, maybe the fact that Kat Blaque claims she doesn't have a business-minded sense about her content is the problem here. If your content isn't popular, you're gonna get more hate. If your content isn't well received because you choose to make content that is not interested in being well received in its presentation, then it's not going to be well received. Also, how's this mean Vaush is the problem?
Of the leftist streamer quite confusing to me. At 31, I'm embarrassed to acknowledge that I finally identify with my parents who used to struggle with how rapidly technology changes. Streaming is something that feels so above my head, and while I've tried to understand it for my own work, I still struggle with understanding the culture around it.
I don't understand TikTok, don't worry, I'm right there with you.
Maybe it's my Cambral past, but staring at a person for hours on end or having them drone on in the background doesn't really appeal to me. I enjoy streams when they're structured, but I don't really understand the parasocial nature of streaming culture. Perhaps because of this, I've been baffled by the trend of the so-called dirtbag leftist who doesn't feel very functionally different than the anti-SJW crowd that used to harass me. In fact, to my understanding, that's their target audience.
But my goal is to bring them in and make them not that anymore. Like, for all I care, if I'm bringing people in and they're coming out and they're coming in like reactionaries and coming out not reactionaries, they're coming out progressive lefties, then I'm happy with that. Objectively, in my opinion, I'm happy with the effect my content is having on the world. I'm happy with it, at least, if that's the effect it's having, supposedly. I like to think it is. People tell me it is.
Speaking of being young and hip, my first impression of the dirtbag left was that it's an attempt to make all of this boring political stuff more entertaining and edgy. They say the naughty words I avoided during my pop feminist days, and apparently these tactics appeal to people who were caught up in the so-called alt-right pipeline.
I mean, if we could say those dirty words, then it would work way better, but no, we can't. No, we dirtbag lefties have to very, very carefully conform what we say and do to make sure that we don't get eaten by our own. If we were given full reign to make our content as appealing to those figures as possible and really get down and dirty and fucking muddy and disgusting and degenerate and fucking bloody, if we were allowed to get that fucking dirty, hell, most of it's just because YouTube doesn't let you anymore, okay? If we were really able to get down and dirty into the mud with some of these fucking reactionaries, oh boy, it'd be fun shit. But we can't, so we don't. You've only seen a fraction of our power, Kat Blaque. If we've been pulling our punches against these conservatives, all right? You have any... listen, go back and watch the video where I talk about Magdalene Burns, okay? Go watch my video on Magdalene Burns. I'm surprised I haven't gotten in trouble for that one.
Readers might be shocked to hear this, but I am not a white person, so I've often struggled to understand how a white kid could grow up and just accidentally...
Magdalene Burns in hell.
...trip, do a racism and start advocating for an ethnostate. So this content has never really appealed to me, personally. That said, I was constantly told that their work was far more effective and far more leftist than mine. As a person who obviously wants what I create to be helpful to others, I overlooked my initial reservations and tried to understand the tactics behind their approach. However, I predominantly saw them through the lens of Twitter, where I'd see them engage in racism, sexism, and transphobia in an apparent pursuit of leftist principles.
No qualification, no supporting for that statement. Outright accusation of racism, sexism, and transphobia, and nothing else.
I was told repeatedly that whatever I interpreted as bias was simply tactical. When I'd say this didn't seem very left-leaning, their audiences would browbeat me with a very Jordan Peterson-esque demand that I watch their 10-hour-long live stream to understand the full context of why they were saying what they said.
Tactical, indeed. No, there's a very big difference between saying you have to watch the whole live stream and, for the love of God, please stop misrepresenting the point being made. Please stop misrepresenting the point, please. Also, totally gonna just sift over the whole weird sex stuff, aren't we? Just nothing about that, right? And we're not. That would be a little inconvenient for Kat Blaque to acknowledge that. Maybe she will, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it just wasn't spoiled for me and it is in there.
As a person who has been used to being misrepresented, I guess I understood.
Has she ever posted receipts of these claims? Well, Noah Sampson did his best to do so and posted a bunch of screenshots at light speeds, so much so that we had to slow down the video speed for me to be able to pause the screenshots to read them in time. Noah flashed the screenshots on screen so fast, I couldn't pause the video fast enough to read them. So I had to slow down the video to 0.25 speed so that I could pause them fast enough to actually read each of the screenshots. It was 8 frames per screenshot. And the reason why he sped them up was because each screenshot of replies from Vaush's community to ContraPoints and Kat Blaque were all like, please reconsider your position on this. You don't understand all the context of this issue. Please consider, like the argument was, this is Vaush's community engaging in harassment. It's like, you're incorrect. Please inform yourself on the issue before giving an uninformed take on it. Like none of them are insulting. They're all at most saying this is disappointing to hear from her. Most of them are saying, I love you, Contra, but
that request to some degree, but time and time again, this brand of right-wing appealing leftist content was not only unwelcoming to me, but incredibly antagonistic towards all of the discussions I had about race and gender. It seemed like being part of the dirtbag.
Hold on. I just realized Kat Blaque and Vaush's sexting thing happened when Vaush was somewhat prominent, right? Because it was back in 2019 is when she said, which means most likely after the tactical stuff and the Thought Slime meltdown stream, most likely after a lot of the shit that Vaush is known for being canceled for. So I will say that makes it a little funnier that she's shitting on that stuff now when she would then go on to not only sex that guy, but then to also publicly air that without his permission to the whole world, and then go on a whole thread of tweets about white dick and Vaush's dick and your mutual phase of being interested in racist, leftist, bearded white men that you had mutually with Professor Flowers because you decided to have that conversation publicly in a Twitter thread. God, it's such a shit show, and Kat Blaque is so unapologetically in the wrong that it feels insulting that she hasn't brought it up yet, you know?
Left was being dismissive of these issues, and it was bizarre for me to observe that these particular people were being celebrated as further left than I was. It's strange to me how their ideas can parallel conservatives, yet somehow be further left than me. This confused me quite a bit, but my altercation with Vaush, the most prominent dirtbag leftist, would help me understand exactly why I should have gone with my gut and ignored this altogether.
There we go. We have the dedicated button now. The dedicated sus button.
Instead of trying to understand the tactics. When it came to Vaush and others like him, I had large...
Look, it's the joke. The joke that we've talked about a billion, trillion, gajillion times. The joke that the entire point of the argument was, okay, sure. All right, the sexism in the joke wasn't funny. Okay, yeah, sure, the joke was an L, whatever. But why are you all focusing on my joke and lending credence to J.K. Rowling's argument that the pro-trans side of the debate is sexist against women when you could be focusing on using this opportunity to spread as much dirt about J.K. Rowling to the media as possible? That was literally the whole argument, was I'm not defending the misogyny, I'm pointing out that your continued railing against this, you are just wasting an opportunity to make all of J.K. Rowling's horrible arguments and all of her behavior horrible to the public. Also, she's a billionaire, so we're not exactly we're punching up here, but regardless, no matter who it's towards, misogyny is not okay. The issue is whether or not the misogyny in the joke Vaush made is worth the amount of derision he received in a time where the left could have used this opportunity to potentially socially ruin J.K. Rowling, or at the very least use this as a jumping off point to educate a broad amount of the population about trans issues and why J.K. Rowling's women are in danger from trans women is all bullshit. Like, this could have been a learning experience for the broader populace on these issues, and instead it became well, we gotta have every opportunity we can to say Vaush bad, don't we? That's what it was. They sacrificed an opportunity to dunk on J.K. Rowling to dunk on Vaush, because to them, Vaush is a more attractive dunking target than J.K. Rowling is, despite the fact that J.K. Rowling is an infinitely more influential billionaire bigot, and Vaush is admittedly quite wealthy, but still just a YouTube content creator lefty who makes content that on 99.9% of issues you agree with.
Largely dismiss them as being not for me. If they help little racist white kids come to the left, I think that's probably a good thing. However, Vaush would often trend on Twitter each time he'd get into some spat or say something dumb. Recently, he made a tweet where he said that J.K. Rowling could have remained a beloved author, but instead decided to derail her career to be transphobic. I agreed with that part. He then followed that tweet up with an ironic joke about how women should be more silent, not to...
Chat. The reason why a misogynistic ironic joke is harmful is not because there's no such thing as an ironic misogynistic joke, so it must be indicative of truly held misogynistic beliefs. The reason why that kind of humor is harmful is because of the tangible effect it can have on, most notably, women who see it and maybe feel hurt by it, or impressionable people in Vaush's audience who see it and and this is a problem Vaush has acknowledged, and this is the best criticism of this tweet, because Vaush has acknowledged this is a problem in his audience before. Vaush's audience will see him make an edgy joke, then repeat the joke, but not do it right, and it ends up just being racist or bigoted. Like the Echoes thing or the Pepe thing, anytime Jews are brought up, like his chat would do that because he'd do it whenever somebody would, like, a Nazi would, like, do the echo sign, hint, hint, nudge, nudge thing in a video, and Vaush would, like, call that out. And so then his chat in response would spam, like, the Pepe emote to, like, signify, yeah, we get that this is a dog whistle, nobody's falling for it. But then it started to get to the point where Vaush would mention the word Jewish, and his chat would Pepe, because they'd been trained into doing so. And Vaush had to go on a whole tangent about how, guys, it's not funny if you just do the anti-Semitism, like, because you think it's funny. Like you're doing it all wrong. Like, he had to go on a whole thing about that. Vaush has recognized that's a problem in his audience before, so a valid criticism against this tweet would be, if Vaush knows it's an issue, why did he make this tweet knowing that his audience may repeat this kind of humor and get it completely fucked up and end up just doing outright sexism? That is by far the most valid, good faith criticism of this tweet there is. Does anyone disagree with that? That is no bad faith, doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth about Vaush, and frankly, if Vaush was in the chat, he'd probably say, you know what, Zan, you're probably right. And then we just move on, and that'd be the end of it. That is probably the best criticism of Vaush here. I'm capable of self-criticism. I'm capable of criticizing my friends and my own art form and what I do. I am not immune to criticism. I am not incapable of taking it. The problem is it feels like all these people that are saying they just want to levy valid, good faith, constructive criticism towards me or the type of content I do or my friends, it always feels like it's motivated by personal vendettas and grudges. And it always is. I remember when you debated Vaush on covering Chris Chan and you won. Yeah, I mean, one on an issue like that is very weird because we're debating subjective preference on whether or not we should be covering a topic. And the issue I guess you could say I won on was that covering the Chris Chan thing, if Vaush did it, would result in, another voice having a reasonable and non-insane take on the issue that's being politicized for anti-trans purposes or other nefarious reasons out there. And I made that point, and Vaush agreed. However, Vaush still maintained the position, still does, that he does not want to get his hands dirty in that weird Kiwi Farms, lol cow part of the internet. He's not interested in that. He doesn't want to. And he still maintains that position, and I respect it. So winning that debate, it's up in the, it's weird to call it that, I'd say. But if you want to say it that way, say that I beat Vaush in a debate, then sure, I beat Vaush in a debate.
ERFs. Not J.K. Rowling specifically, women. This tweet got a lot of attention, including from J.K. Rowling herself, who would go on to compare his tweet to the domestic violence she experienced from previous partners. Now, TERF discourse is mind-numbingly cyclical, and entertaining it as reasonable probably isn't a good idea. But one thing I've observed from many gender-critical cis women is they often seem to be functioning from a place of very real trauma. Trauma they have because of how men have abused or mistreated them. When I came back to YouTube, I decided to speak openly about my experience as a rape survivor. I had spoken around that topic on my channel for years, and I wanted to start having conversations about trauma because those conversations aren't frequently had. As a survivor, I understand how trauma can frequently manifest in a way that isn't.
Do you notice how I pointed this out earlier. One of the biggest, do you remember my most recent Noah Samson response video, the one to his newest video? Hypers, if you saw that. Hypers in chat, if you saw my response to Noah Samson's newest video on, or not newest, but second newest video, the one on the Vaush effect. If you saw that, you'll remember that one of the defining differences between the type of content Noah, Kat Blaque, Professor Flowers, any of these woke scoldy figures, the type of content they make and the way they respond to criticism and hate is to beg for sympathy from their audience that already agrees with them. Like this entire thing is a sob story, right? This is very much a sob story. You're meant to feel bad. It's supposed to tug at the heartstrings, right? But like someone like me or Vaush responding to situations where we could absolutely play the victim and make it a sob story, instead project strength and indifference and deference to it. Because, and I'm going to be honest here, the internet is a rough fucking place for everybody, and you cannot get blood from a stone. Kat Blaque saying that she's developed a thick skin over the years may be true, but she hasn't figured out how to deal with the internet. Growing a thick skin isn't how you become a successful liked figure on the internet. If no matter what you do, you're going to be disliked, and you're going to have thick skin to deal with that. As far as getting people to like you, you have to stop trying to change the internet. You can't change the internet. You have to change with the internet to exist on it at any prominence, okay? When people try to change the internet, they become laughingstocks and lolcows. You have to adapt to the internet. It is a rough, brutal place. You have to recognize that everything you say, you're putting yourself out there, and people are going to hit you fucking hard. Haters are going to hate. And you have to be able to adapt to that. The best way to deal with like humor going after you is to run with the joke. Never get angry at people joking about you. Run with the joke. Or call out how ridiculous it is in a fairly charismatic way that doesn't come off as offended or mad or copy. You know, you adapt to the internet. You can't change the way that people view other people online, but you can make it so that the way people view you online is positive. If that's what you want. If that's what you want.
Rational where you may fear certain types of people because of what you've been through. I don't really believe in sympathy for transphobes, but I do empathize with the fact that some of these people have experienced trauma and feel how they do for that reason. Perhaps because it's a very personal thing for me, but when I saw this tweet...
We can turn up the playback speed. Oh my god. We're going up to 1.5, baby. Yes, let's go.
Even though I understood he was making a joke, the misogyny bothered me. In theory, he's saying something that was in defense of me, but I didn't feel particularly helped by what was frankly an unnecessary misogynistic joke. TERFs are often struggling to find examples of transgender women and their advocates being misogynistic, and it just seemed like a very obviously bad...
Wrong. No, this is untrue. Plenty of popular memes and trans jokes online do speak about women in a way that would be seen as misogynistic in most lefty spaces, but are completely allowed because you're talking about TERFs. A lot of jokes made in the trans community about women who are TERFs are decidedly misogynistic. I'm sorry, Guys, did you see the recent response to the photos that came out of J.K. Rowling and all of those like old British TERFs at the at that like lesbian gathering convention thing? Did you see like the comments that lefties were leaving? The most vile, like mean comments attacking their appearances. Listen, all I'm saying, scurvy convention, there we go, right? Like plenty of the comments were quite misogynistic too, coming from accounts with trans flags in their bio or in their name. I'm not saying that misogyny is actually a problem among the trans community. It's not. Not any more than it is among any other community, at least. I mean, I guess misogyny is everywhere, but still. The problem is that J.K. Rowling would have picked anybody. If J.K. Rowling needed to find a 5-follower trans Twitter account, probably just a 4chan sock account, really, though, that was making misogynistic comment to make her point, she would have. It would have been anybody. It would have been anybody. If she had the ammo, it would have been anybody. And the ammo is there. She's done it before. She's done, like, sent harassment to small trans accounts before. It's not unheard of. The idea that if it weren't for Vaush, then there would have been scarce examples of this is absurd.
Idea to be misogynistic while defending transgender women, especially because it seemed like it sabotaged the message of the tweet. And it wasn't necessary. I believe he didn't expect her to see it, but I'm still confused by why that matters. The post went viral and appeared in my feed and certainly made me think about the tactics of so-called transgender allies that may lean heavily into misogyny. In recent years, I've come to regret the ways we spoke about allyship during the height of pop feminism in the 2010 seconds. I think it encouraged a very performative expression of support that focused on building a brand around your allyship instead of actually doing the work to truly unpack the impact of the
I hate the word ally. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not... By the technical definition or whatever, you could call me an ally, okay? I'm not going all cringe logic bro here, but like, in all seriousness, the positions I advocate for, I truly believe are correct. And I don't like when people are wrong. And while I am motivated in large part by a desire to make the world a better place, I do have empathy, I do care about people. I also believe strongly that my opinions are motivated and informed by correct observations about the world, usually derived from data and studies and articles written, synthesized, put together by much smarter people than me. These are the things that have led me to my positions and keep me on my positions. And they're what I try to use in large part to convince people when it comes to the factual aspects of my presentation. But I don't care to call myself an ally. I don't think I'm morally superior to somebody who hasn't been bread pilled yet. I think I'm morally superior to somebody who goes out of their way to engage in racist rhetoric online all day. I think I'm morally superior to them. But I don't think I'm morally superior to the random 15-year-old gamer bro neo-Nazi who watched too many right-wing videos and now has stumbled across mine and is giving it a shot. I don't think I'm morally superior to that kid in this hypothetical, right? Like, that's not where my motivations come from. Maybe that's not where they come from Kat Blaque, but it feels that way, doesn't it?
oppression and how the privileged benefit from it. A lot of people seem to have gotten the impression that putting things in their bios or wearing t-shirts was enough. And most of these people truly only put on those performances for other privileged folks. I remember how jarring that was when I moved to Los Angeles, and the allies in my various communities seemed to only ever surround themselves with other privileged people and never truly stood up for the marginalized in a way that would require they be a bit uncomfortable. For example, I remember when a venue in La made it clear that they were going to specifically charge transgender women more for entry, as to discourage them from coming. I saw several of the people who'd post pro-trans stuff on their various social media pages still go to that event because they wanted to. An event I wasn't welcomed, but they were. It's clear to me that some people deeply resent the idea of allyship in practice, but support the idea of it.
Can you imagine getting away with that today? Charging more for trans people to go to an event? Holy fuck. Jesus Christ.
But in theory. At least that's the impression I get. It seems like allyship has become this thing to be congratulated, not an expression of work you've done to understand what you're supporting. Seeing these allies get defensive when someone expresses to them that what they're doing isn't very helpful. The conversation shifts immediately from trying to address the issues they're claiming to be against, and it becomes all about them. It's clear to me that people like Vaush really resent the idea of their advocacy being criticized in any way, and it doesn't help that by virtue of being a cis white man, he's applauded and given a mountain of support and credit for just saying literally anything. I'm supposed to be thankful that someone more privileged than I said something supportive of transgender.
Oh my god, wow, she's getting really bitter now. Okay, let's get to the spite. Okay, we're in the spite section of the Cope post. Let's go!
Specifically charge transgender women more for entry. as to discourage them from coming. I saw several of the people who'd post pro-trans stuff on their various social media pages still go to that event because they wanted to. An event I wasn't welcomed, but they were. It's clear to me that some people deeply resent the idea of allyship in practice, but support the idea of it in theory. At least that's the impression I get. It seems like allyship has become this thing to be congratulated, not an expression of work you've done to understand what you're supporting. I've seen these allies get defensive when someone expresses to them that what they're doing isn't very helpful. The conversation shifts immediately from trying to address the issues they're claiming to be against, and
I like the framing. They get really defensive when they say that what they're doing isn't helpful. Is that what we're defending against? Is that what we're defending against? Claims that what we're doing isn't helpful. If you say so, Kat, that is exactly what we're arguing against. No. In all seriousness, what we argue against is a constant torrent of bad faith misrepresentations of our arguments, nonstop clips of our streams taken out of context, used to defame and spread lies about us in blatant and obvious schemes to try and stem. Obviously, there's Thought Slime spreading the sex cult lie to try and fuck up my career before it ever really started. Obviously, you have Noah Samson, a much larger figure than me, lying about me and using his video just to, I guess, vent about his interpersonal grudge he had on me for some Twitter bullshit. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Becomes all about them. It's clear to me that people like Vaush really resent the idea of their advocacy being criticized in any way, and it doesn't help that by virtue of being a cis white man, he's applauded and given a mountain of support and credit for just saying literally anything. I'm supposed to be thankful that someone more privileged than I said something supportive of transgender people, and if I criticize it, I'm a woke scold. Oh, and that's another thing. The dirtbag left hates wokeness, which almost always refers to the very...
You got it. You got it, Kat. You're on the ball with this one. What a perfect demonstration of how Kat Blaque totally understands our positions on these issues. What a perfect demonstration of mutual understanding of each other's positions. In all seriousness, the reason why we use the term woke scold is not because being woke is bad. Being woke, in terms of the definition of being woke, is good. The term woke scold is used because woke has the prefix scold added on to it. All right? Or the affix scold added on to it. As in, being woke is fine, being a woke suffix. God damn it, I suck. I suck dick. Fuck me. All right, suffix. The suffix scold is being added onto it. Scold is a negative term. Woke, positive. Scold, negative. The term in itself, negative, right? Does not mean woke is bad, okay? The issue with woke scolds, as I like to term them, woke scoldery is to be abusive and cruel and to engage in behavior that would otherwise be seen as the behavior of an asshole, but to use woke language to hide your true motivations and the true nature of your behavior. An example of woke scolding would be if a woman walked up to a guy and then punched him in the face and then just started like wailing on him for no reason, and then the guy eventually shoved her away, and then she just started screaming about how he shoved a woman. And you can't hit a woman because that's sexist. That's a thing that's happened as well. That's not a made-up scenario, but that is an extreme example of woke scolding. Now, is it true that you probably shouldn't hit women if you're a guy? Yeah, it is true. But defending yourself against someone who's attacking you in some way, and then that person using their identity as a defense, is woke scolding. That's more crybully, no? Yes, but the term woke scold specifies a type of crybully. To be a crybully is a more broad umbrella than to be a woke scold. All woke scolds are crybullies, not all crybullies are woke scolds. You have to understand this. It's very important to understand the dichotomy.
Various conversations marginalized people have about their experiences with oppression. To me, citing misogyny while defending transgender people draws attention to the lack of work he's done when it comes to truly understanding transphobia. Transphobia and misogyny are intrinsically...
Yes, woke scold is to woke as toxic masculinity is to masculinity, yes.
Tied. Transgender women are seen as shameful men who have lowered themselves to become something lesser than them. And trans men are seen as confused women who are incapable of understanding their own bodies, who must be led back to their rightful, delicate genders. Both of these thoughts cite misogyny. For that reason, I have always been suspicious of people who are misogynistic, but pro-trans. However, that's me. I wanted to ask other transgender women how they felt. So, I made a post asking transgender women how they felt about the situation. The post was prefaced with a request to ignore who posted it, and reservations they may have about Vaush and focus on the tactic of using misogyny to defend transgender women. I presented the topic this way because, frankly, it didn't matter to me that he was the one who made the post. I was focused on the tactics because I didn't understand how someone could advocate against transphobia. yet be misogynistic, even in a joking context. Going against my gut, I wondered if I was simply out of touch, so I wanted to understand if other transgender women saw the post and appreciated it. The answers I got were interesting. Most transgender women said they didn't appreciate it, but some said they didn't mind it because J.K. Rowling was a terrible person. I understood that position, but it surprised me how many transgender women weren't fazed by misogyny. Very briefly, I thought to myself that maybe these TERFs are getting the impression that transgender women on Twitter engage in misogyny from nowhere. But that was a narrow way of viewing it. I think because misogyny has...
By the way, what she's saying here is the trans women who aren't bothered by the misogyny is all the trans women that agreed with Vaush and didn't immediately jump on board with the anti-Vaush hate train. Basically, this is a way... So, a very common tactic used by, I'm going to say it, woke scolds, is to disregard the word and opinion of marginalized people that agree with the person they're criticizing. Now, normally, just pointing to, oh, people from insert group agree with me isn't an argument. Like, if I just said, oh, you think I'm transphobic? Well, look how many trans people are in my audience. That's not an argument. That is not a valid argument whatsoever. However, it is a valid argument against the claim that I need to listen to trans people. That was a common one. Xander Hall needs to listen to trans people. Well, what about all the trans people on my Discord server and in my chat that agree with me? Well, not those trans people. Then why not just say I need to listen to trans people that disagree with me from the start? Not to mention, the entire presumption from the beginning is that I don't listen to trans people that disagree with me, when in fact I do. I listen to them, and then I debunk all of their claims against me, because typically, when woke scolds attack me, it's usually not too valid. And then sometimes I listen to criticisms, and they're valid. There's been criticisms I've gotten from trans people that are valid, on topics having to do with my discussion of trans stuff, and other issues even. And I've taken that criticism to heart and changed because of it. The problem is the vast majority of the criticism I get isn't really criticism. There's nothing for me to work with. It's just an accusation meant to put a bad label next to my name in someone's mind so that if they ever see one of my videos pop up in the recommended, they know not to click on the Xander Hall video, because Xander Hall is one of the bad ones. That's the point, right?
Impacted my life very drastically. I have a very different response to stuff like this. To me, the idea that we can weaponize isms against people we dislike really doesn't seem productive. It seems like fighting against one problem while creating another. I understand it being said in a cathartic context, but I didn't understand it in the context of advocacy for transgender women. I had a well-rounded conversation about his ideas, and it reached its natural conclusion. I mostly ignored Twitter for the rest of the evening. Then late at night, while I was waiting for my boyfriend to get off work, I got a direct message from Vaush. He was upset about my tweets. He believed that I had some sort of hate boner for him and really didn't appreciate.
What an interesting way to phrase Vaush reaching out to Kat Blaque. He was mad about my tweets, and he believed I had some sort of hate boner for him. He literally reached out and said, I really respect you, and I would like to discuss it. Can we find the, here. Oh no, am I blocked by Kat Blaque? No. No, wait. No. No! Oh, no! She got me! Oh, no! She wants to hide the evidence from us, guys. She's hiding the evidence. How do you open a fucking private tab in this shit again? Alright. So, here we go. This was the tweet thread. So I'll make a confession. Oh, wait, we can just look at the Dropbox. There we go. Perfect. 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 We don't talk anymore, which is completely fine, but I do take issue with some of the stuff you've said and would like to talk about it. Privately, of course. I don't want to drag you on stream. Okay. That's pretty cordial. All right, let's see the next one. Maybe it seems like he's got a hate boner or he thinks that in later, or maybe he seems upset. Look, with respect, I feel the way you've characterized me here gives me the impression you think personal attacks and vapid, senseless prejudice criticisms are a common and an inherent part of the content I produce. I own up to being edgy. I love being edgy, but the edginess is generally just a rhetorical framework through which I try to deliver good arguments. I'll own up to criticism for the ironic misogyny. That's fine and fair. It really wasn't, damn it, really wasn't even funny. But I take issue with the way you and others in the online left have responded to my tweets because I think you're actually the one empowering and bolstering J.K. Rowling's arguments, not me. I'll explain with a comparison. Ben Shapiro is a racist who cloaks his attacks against black people with criticisms of their... Damn it, my fat fucking face. Okay, I think maybe she interpreted... I think I understand why she might have interpreted Vaush as being angry, but... If you are able to just look at the parts where he's referring to her, this seems like an extraordinarily dishonest framing from Kat Blaque. Am I the only, does this not come off as extraordinarily dishonest? Let's rewind it a little bit and re-listen to what she had to say about the way Vaush messaged her.
The answers I got were interesting. Most transgender women said they didn't appreciate it, but some said they didn't mind it because J.K. Rowling was a terrible person. I understood that position, but it surprised me how many transgender women weren't fazed by misogyny. Very briefly, I thought to myself that maybe these TERFs are getting the impression that transgender women on Twitter engage in misogyny from nowhere. But that was a narrow way of viewing it. I think because misogyny has impacted my life very drastically, I have a very different response to stuff like this. To me, the idea that we can weaponize isms against people we dislike really doesn't seem productive. It seems like fighting against one problem while creating another. I understand it being said in a cathartic context, but I didn't understand it in the context of advocacy for transgender women. I had a well-rounded conversation about his ideas, and it reached its natural conclusion. I mostly ignored Twitter for the rest of the evening. Then late at night, while I was waiting for my boyfriend to get off work, I got a direct message.
Let's go ahead and hear how she frames it.
From Vaush. He was upset about my tweets. He believed that I had some sort of hate boner for him and really didn't appreciate my public criticism of his tweets. Frankly, I was baffled because I didn't understand why he cared that I was having an objective conversation about his ideas. Not him as a creator. My thread didn't include personal attacks, nor did it encourage people to attack him. It was quite the opposite, but he wasn't convinced. Once again, what I said couldn't be taken.
It couldn't possibly be that Vaush, like an adult, reached out to you in private to work out a clear disagreement you had. It couldn't have possibly been that. Like how he said it was in the messages, in private with you, before you leaked them, presuming that these messages would never see the light of day. Like, you have to remember, Vaush could never have known going in that Kat Blaque was going to leak the DMs. So he was, and I don't think he would have thought that was something she'd do. So those messages, completely in private, as well-mannered as they were not done for show or to make it so he'd look nice and kind in front of an audience. Those messages were never meant to see the light of day. That was him just being sincerely nice and having a positive and kind tone and being understanding and honest and charitable just because he wanted to be honest and charitable with this disagreement with Kat Blaque in private and not make it a big deal. I want you to remember, he didn't write those messages in such a completely reasonable way because he expected us all to see it and be impressed by it, but because he wanted to be nice to her and solve that issue or that disagreement like an adult.
At face value, there was some unspoken sinister nature beneath my words. I tried to politely communicate that he isn't the person who takes up space in my mind like that, but there's really no way of saying that without sounding like a massive bitch.
22 minutes out of 44 minutes. We're halfway into the 44-minute Cope post, and now we're getting but I seriously don't care about him that much. I love that she's continually saying, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. I don't care! I don't care!
I don't hate anyone online, and sadly, often to my detriment, I tend to be a very forgiving person. However, I deeply resent the idea that I have to engage with all of these random lefty folks who make YouTube content. With that being my position, I could have ignored the messages, and I probably should have, but since I was bored, I entertained him a bit. I respect that his fans probably think I owed him a private debate, but members of my audience know that I tend to have conversations like this to have objective conversations about people's ideas, not really tear them down as individuals. For example, in the several videos I've made criticizing Ariel Scarcella's content, I focus on her content and the ideas behind it, not her as a person. Socially, she's also an absolutely miserable person that I'm not a fan of, but that really isn't relevant to the conversations I've had about her ideas. Watch almost any video I've ever made criticizing other bloggers and you won't find me being obsessed with tearing them down, personally. However, I think I might have...
This is okay, I get really triggered when people say that SNL is bad for the left or whatever. I'm sorry, but sometimes Trump orange Cheeto jokes are funny to liberals, and that's going to convince people Trump bad. I'm sorry. People on the left complain about the SNL tier Trump orange bad man Cheeto jokes, but people like that shit. That shit gets millions of views. It does well. It gets ratings. New viewers start watching that shit all the time. It brings in new viewers. Like, there is value in a diversity of tactics in the way of presenting content meant to, I hope, convince people to be on the left. And that's a big if, that's even what Kat Blaque's goal is with her content, to convince people to be on the left.
Have truly underestimated his ego. I cannot think of any time in my 16 years of being on YouTube that I have gone into someone's DMs to demand that they have a debate with me. And I certainly wouldn't feel the need to do it in this context. I respect that he felt misrepresented, but it's not like he didn't know he was deliberately citing misogyny. That was the joke. I always find it to be quite strange when people throw rocks and then hide their hands. I fully acknowledge that he was joking, but that didn't change the question for me. I didn't think he was a true misogynist until he said misogynistic things to me privately. I didn't understand why the conversation needed to happen to begin with. Let's say we went over everything, and he convinced me that his tweet wasn't that bad. My question wasn't how he felt about it. It was about how transgender women felt about people who use misogyny to advocate for transgender women. He was not the target audience of my posts. Trans women are J.K. Rowling's main target, but I got the impression from this conversation that he resented the very idea of transgender women sharing their input about the efficacy of his advocacy.
No. The fact that you made the post indicated you disagreed with his beliefs. So he wanted to talk about it in private. Like adults. Disagreeing is not abuse. Stop! Disagreeing is not abuse. Please. God, I hear... Okay, I'm sorry, but like, we're only halfway through.
Once again, the fact that he was saying anything was apparently enough, and I should just appreciate it and stop complaining. At a certain point, he told me that he was a better advocate for the transgender community than I've ever been, which seemed like a needlessly arrogant thing for a cis man to say to a
That's a little bit reductionist, but okay.
Transgender woman who quite literally sacrificed stealth and subsequent safety to advocate for transgender people. He contacted me with the purpose of winning an argument, nothing more and nothing less. I know that...
At least now we know exactly where Kat Blaque's intentions are. It's full-on malicious, like, attacking of character. The fact, like, either Kat Blaque is incapable of understanding basic social cues, or she legitimately just wants to farm social credits, like lefty social credits.
Cis white men hate hearing things like this, but the rhetoric J.K. Rowling espouses does not directly impact them but very much does impact me. That's why I had the conversation I did. Whether shit gets worse for transgender women or not, he will remain unaffected, and I cannot personally say the same. His degree of confidence and arrogance was unfathomably to me. He had a lot of audacity to say some of the things he said to me. It seemed like at every turn, he resented the idea of not being at the center of the conversation. At some point, he even tried to make the argument that invalidating his input, as a cis man, was like invalidating a transgender person who hadn't physically transitioned ... It was a mess. I could write a lot of posts dissecting the strange aspects of that conversation, but ultimately, I left it feeling really silly for actually believing that this was a person whose tactics I should consider. His arguments were weak, but I could see how a young white kid with little exposure to the outside world or
His arguments were weak. Let me give you an example of one of the arguments he made. This is a question that he asked her, that after like having to ask it 5 times, she finally answered. Do you think Candace Owens, a black woman who does nothing but spread racist propaganda, is a better voice to listen to on race issues than a leftist white man who believes in like pro whatever, right? You can put it together yourself. Kat Blaque answers Candace Owens. She said yes. She said Candace Owens would be a better representative on race issues. So yes, Vaush's arguments were very bad. They were the ones that were bad. Not to mention, Vaush wasn't even going there looking for an argument. He was just asking a question of her to, like, understand better why she's arguing what she's arguing.
access to intra-community conversations could be convinced by them. However, in all reality, they did not actually measure up. As I disagreed, he'd say things to me like I'm really concerned for you, which of course sounded incredibly condescending and quite misogynistic. I'm not insane or unstable because I don't agree with his ideas, but it seems like he's convinced himself that only insane people could disagree with his logic. All this space taken up by someone who will never experience transphobia and misogyny the way I have throughout my life, and I'm supposed to be thankful to him. The exchange left a poor taste in my mouth. I haven't really been able to define this feeling, but there's a type of interaction I've experienced when men will say some really messed up, often gaslight why or manipulative stuff to you in private, and you're expected to just deal with it because calling it out often reflects poorly on you. I still could not really understand why he contacted me and why he spoke to me how he did. It did not really feel like a conversation.
Good lord. Can people on the internet please fucking learn what gaslight means? Please? Gaslighting is not disagreeing. Gaslighting is not lying. Gaslighting is when you deliberately manipulate somebody into believing that their own memory and sanity is not trustworthy. to claim that somebody's recollection of past events is wrong when you know it's not, and to very insistently convince them otherwise, that your story is actually the true one and you're just remembering things wrong. It's not lying. It's not lying. It's trying to convince someone of the lie when they already know it's a lie. And it's a very personal, like an interpersonal relationship thing that's an abuse tactic. Not something that happens in DMs between content creators on the internet having a disagreement about a political issue. That is not a battleground in which gaslighting happens.
As much as it felt like a setup. His messages were phrased as gotcha moments, and he was shitty to me throughout. After years of putting up with bullshit online and not addressing it publicly, I felt like I should say something. So I made a thread detailing our interaction. I didn't want to share the actual exchange because I felt odd about sharing DMs, but when Vaush saw the thread, he would go on to deny that the conversation went how it did and rant about how obsessed I was with him. This is where my pet peeve got stuck on a loop because I am far from being obsessed with him, but saying this about me so confidently and his audience believing it really did bother me. So I decided to stand up for myself and I shared our DMs on.
Hey, by the way, her whole argument justifying all of this is that she's trying to prove that she's not obsessed with Vaush. Remember that. Her entire justification is, I wanted to prove I'm not obsessed with Vaush. That was her whole goal, I guess.
Twitter. You can see all of our messages right here for your own curiosity. When I posted the DMs, I posted it with the caption, the closest I've ever been to being obsessed with it Vaush is the few days we sexted. But I'm not going to share those messages. Here are the relevant ones. I'm ashamed to admit it, but forever ago, Vaush and I sent some spicy messages back and forth.
I'm ashamed to admit it.
I still wasn't remarkably familiar with his content, but back then I was in a certain headspace and for whatever reason I felt comfortable sexting him. I was still figuring my own shit out and adjusting to life in the city, and I hadn't really been single for a really long time. And I made a
I'm so sorry that I dared engage in anything sexual with the bad guy, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I sexted I'm sorry. Forgive me for doing such a... It's like she's begging for forgiveness from her audience. Which is what it is, by the way.
lot of mistakes with men in that phase of life. Back then, all a guy had to do was be a leftist with a beard and I was probably interested in him. I gave entirely too much credit to men giving themselves the leftist label. At this point in my life, I've dated enough annoying DSA dudes to no longer give men such credit. I honestly don't even remember how it started or who initiated it, but it happened, and I...
That's funny. Reminds me of like the R Nice Girls Twitter posts. You guys ever go to R Nice Girls? It's like the it's like the counterpart to Nice Guys, where it's like the it's women behaving in the same creepy entitled manner that like the nice guys do. You know, like Nice Guy. It's good shit. Reminds me of this.
I knew that he knew that. Since our exchanges, I've heard, but still not deeply researched, that he does that sort of thing with a lot of women, trans women especially. I figured since he was running with the obsessed narrative, that would be the only piece of information he could point to that would back up his claim. I didn't post about him constantly. I hadn't seen many of his streams, and when I looked at my view history, only 5 Vaush videos came up and each of them were about some drama he got into with another creator. I wasn't obsessed with him, but again, my pet peeve got the best of me and here we are. Despite what some bloggers would have you believe, I did not share and would never share our sexts. If they leak, it'll be because of him. I take revenge porn seriously as a person who's experienced it several times through my very brief career as a sex worker. It's not relevant to any of the
I like that. If they leak, it's because of him. That's a really weird thing to say. Like, because you have no actual things you can say that Vaush did wrong, you have to, like, imply that Vaush would.
Conversations we had. In retrospect, I probably didn't need to post that him and I had sexted, but it felt preemptive. While I can acknowledge it as unnecessary, I still have an awfully hard time feeling bad about it, especially because of where things went after this. It was incredibly frustrating.
It felt preemptive, because I felt like Vaush might make it public, so I had to make it public first.
To me that Vaush, like every other white cis man before him, got to lead the conversation about who I was, what I believed, and how I felt in his much larger audience, like many other audiences before, just uncritically ate it up. Being in that position really sucks, especially when you're someone like me, who devotes so much time to very carefully detailing every way in which they feel about something. I hated the fact that I could write about the exchange, and he could just deny it, so I posted proof. In the same thread, I explained how I fell into sexting with him all of those years back. He took my comments about bearded leftist men and somehow concluded that I was specifically speaking about white men and would argue on his stream that I just really wanted his dick. He would speak about how black women like myself, who stand up against white supremacy and
There it is. We love that rewriting of history. We love that entirely rewritten line of events. So what actually happened was Vaush was responding to Professor Flowers. If you don't know, has a long history with Vaush of drama and arguments and stuff like that, who replied to the tweet where Kat Blaque outs that Vaush and her had sexted, in which they have a public conversation back and forth Professor Flowers and Kat Blaque, in that tweet thread about their mutual phase of being into lefty guys with beards. Implied white, but I mean, they're referring to Vaush, right? And yeah, Vaush was responding to that tweet thread saying, yeah, really racist black women love white dick, just like how racist white dudes love watching interracial cuck porn. It is the way they are. Racists tend to really fetishize other races, and that was it. And then in response to that, I think I might have directly worded it word for word there. In response to that, Kat Blaque then says, am I fiending for white dick? No, but it's not my preference. Whatever the tweet was, I don't remember. It's something about white dick and not her preference, and then whatever. That was what prompted that tweet. At no point did Vaush ever push the envelope. Kat Blaque was always the one who made it weirder. Every time.
And advocate against their own oppression, truly deep down inside. Have a fetish for white men. We apparently racially fetishize white men the way racist white men racially fetishize black women. These comments really upset me because I have devoted a lot of time on my YouTube channel to speaking about how racial fetishism has harmed and alienated me.
Wow, holy shit. Kat Blaque, how are you so unreceptive to the possibility that you could have some internalized bigotry somewhere inside of you? God, I don't know, but I feel like being capable of reflecting on the possibility of having internalized bigotry is very important as a progressive person, regardless of who you are or where you come from or what your identity is. At least that was my perspective as a progressive person.
Especially in the context of relationships. He twisted what I said and argued that I wanted to be sexually degraded by white men into me.
Because Xanderhall POC can never be racist? That's the implication, yes. And that's what you're supposed to believe deep down. They'll never come out and say it. Like, the woke scolds will never come out and say it. But what they want you to believe and not really say it out loud is that
was pretty repulsive. In response, I made a tweet about how underwhelming his penis was, because, between you and I really couldn't remember what it looked like, just that it was forgettable to me. That seemed like a rather light comment in comparison. Like my previous comment.
Why? Wait. She's doing it again. This is like, I'm trying to think of an example of this. This is like, she's doing the thing that she's supposedly supposed to be sorry for, I guess. She never initially said that his dick was forgettable. She just added that little bit in. She just unprompted added that little bit in about his dick being, I guess, forgettable. Whatever that means. Like, that was never said to begin with. That wasn't her reiterating a take that she'd made before. That was her adding another insult about his dick to her Coke post to body shame further. By the way, I thought we were against body shaming. Apparently not. To body shame further when you're apparently, like, oh my God. Like, what did Vaush say or do to prompt that what she just said there? I'm curious about that. Right before you pause, she accused Vaush of saying that she wanted to be sexually degraded by white men. Oh, of course he never said that. She's completely lying. But, you know, she can say whatever she wants. Her audience doesn't care if she's telling the truth about Vaush. Vaush is one of the bad YouTubers that you're supposed to hate. So any negative thing you hear about them, you take to the heart and you say it. And if it's wrong, then it doesn't matter because, you know, all the other things are probably true. So what's it matter if one of those things isn't true, you know? That's genuinely the thought process these people use.
And I can acknowledge that it probably didn't need to be said, but I struggle to feel bad for saying a man who argued that I was obsessed with white dick had an underwhelming penis. I just do. I've been bullied and mistreated all my life. I have never known what it felt like to be protected beyond very few, often very conditional romantic partnerships. I think for that reason, I have these two fairly dramatic reactions to situations like this. My default position is to be patient and thoughtful, but there's also a side of me that will go right for the throat if I want the conversation to end and end quickly. That's what happened in this situation, and it's a side of me that most of you don't see because it's not a side I enjoy sharing. I cannot defend what I've said, but I will repeat that I do not feel bad for saying it, and perhaps my long history of being harassed has made it hard for me to understand why these sorts of things bother other people so much.
Oh yeah, do you guys remember the super fucking dumb conservative that Vaush debated way back in the day, Extreme Dad? He's still around, like skulking around on Kiwi farms and in like alt accounts in our chats every once in a while. And who's Extreme Dad? Most of you won't know who he is because he's sort of like an OG lolcow. He's this like middle-aged man who can barely form an argument together, who's repeatedly tried to debate lefty streamers online and just keeps getting blown out. and now just kind of now after having been like banned from every chat, now just kind of spitefully makes alt accounts to get insta banned in everyone's chat, and then goes back into hiding for a few months. Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's kind of pathetic though. Very sad.
I understand how they would if we were any other two people, but I struggle to understand why it mattered in this case. From what I could tell, there was a completely different set of rules for him, and he gets to be disrespectful and shitty, and if I do it back, I'm the asshole. I guess I genuinely thought he could take it, but much like J.K. Rowling twisting his shitty, but rather...
Ah, yes, that is... It was that you were mean was the issue, entirely. Not that you were just wrong and spreading lies. That's not what people had an issue with at all, Kat. No, of course not.
Harmless tweet into a conversation about domestic violence. He and many other bloggers would twist this altercation into a story of sexual abuse and harassment and milk it for weeks to come. What I didn't understand at the time, that I now very much do, is this really seems to be what this kind of streaming culture is about. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've gathered, this type of streaming culture is all about sitting on Twitch long enough before some sort of drama happens between a streamer, another streamer, or their chat. Like the anti-SJWs of yesteryear, whenever some sort of drama pops off, those bloggers will talk about it, and then other bloggers will talk about it, and then other bloggers will talk about those bloggers talking about it on their blog, where they make blogs about other people blogging about blogs. It's a sort of parasitic relationship where the telephone game-esque nature of it all often leads to the story getting bigger and bigger, and the degree of...
I just want you guys to marvel at how much is left. Like, how much she sat down and wrote about him. God. And the thesis of all of this is that she doesn't care. It's so bizarre. I want to hold on. Can we let's reword this again. Can we hold on? I just want to remind you all how this tweet sounds when it comes from Vaush, okay? Let's make it clear, okay? This is how this tweet sounds when it comes from Vaush. First of all, I'm a social justice white wizard. Do I like black pussy? Not necessarily my top choice, but I'll settle for it. I was underwhelmed in this particular case, though. Isn't it weird how when you read that, it sounds like the kind of thing a degenerate, filthy, neckbeard Nazi would say? But when Kat Blaque says, first of all, I'm a social justice black mage. Do I like white dick? Not necessarily my top choice, but I'll settle for it. I was underwhelmed in this particular case, though. Isn't it weird how just changing the phrasing around, just changing who's saying it a little bit, totally changes our, like, inherent natural response to what we just heard? I don't much care about Vaush. Volume 1 of 12. Fucking true, dude. White wizard. I had to say white wizard. I'm sorry. Mages are women, wizards are men. Okay? It's simple as that. Just like all cats are girls and all dogs are boys. I'll acknowledge no other reality. Cope. Seethe. You know what? We're just going to listen to the rest of this because I'm tired of scrolling. It really does take more effort than you realize. So let's just enjoy this imagery of Vaush silencing black women to listen to while we cover this.
Harm gets overstated and overdramatized until there is one very solid villain and another very solid hero. Just like I saw in the online atheist community, the actual politics behind the conversation do not matter as much as the cult of personality these bloggers create around these incidents. This shouldn't have exactly surprised me, since most of the times I saw Vaush trending on Twitter, he was getting into some argument with another creator. He apparently hates leftists and fighting, but from what I gather, he seems to rely on it for content. Makes you wonder how much content he'd have if he solely focused on pressing leftist issues and not his confrontations or even interactions with other creators. The last
Hey, for the record, by the way, most of the content... Wait, hold on. Vaush literally did like a 48, no, not 48, but like over 24-hour long charity stream where he raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Ukrainians. He did the same for Palestine. And he was just playing Nintendo 64 and raising money for charity. And these were some of his highest view streams ever. Actually, they are his highest view streams, I think. If you go to his oh yeah, and Elden Ring. If you go to his most viewed VODs, I'm pretty sure if you sort by most viewed, his charity streams are up there as some of the highest. He raised $330K for Ukraine. Fucking hell, that's more money than I've ever seen in my life. God, holy shit, that's unreal. It's amazing. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like, I think the election stream was highest. Yeah, the election stream, but that also applies to actual pressing political issues. Yeah, the idea that, like, we actually, like, base our entire career and our real bread and butter is talking drama is ridiculous. Where it's really at and what has really grown our channels has always been dunking on conservatives. It's always been our defining characteristics, and it's never been... Like the whole dunking on woke scolds thing, if anything, is always like a nice little vacation from the constant dunking on reactionaries.
conversation I had with Vaush before he recently reached out to me was when he was gearing up for a debate with someone who'd sent harassment my way back in the good old anti-SJW days. This person is, objectively, a grifter, and I didn't understand why he wanted to have a conversation with someone that was so unproductive and deliberately cruel. His YouTube channel was still relatively new, and I had given him a lot of validity in my mind because he labeled himself as a leftist and some of his audience was part of mine, and from what I heard, his content was enjoyable. I didn't understand the decision to have this particular person on his channel because, in my view, there are other more productive conservatives he could speak to who don't have a history of sending harassment at other people. We went back and forth about it, and ultimately, the reason he gave for continuing with the debate was that this person had clout. He was trying to grow his audience, and doing a debate with this person was a great way to do so, and he was right. That conversation...
Is she talking about Hunter Avalone? Oh, wait, are they talking about... Wait, did Kat Blaque try to convince Vaush not to debate a large conservative figure? Wait... Kat Blaque got upset at Vaush before all of this because he was going to debate a large conservative YouTuber. I think it was Hunter Avalone too. That she's mad about him having debated and made like be on the left. And he changed it. Oh my god. They really like the woke scolds really are against the idea of convincing people and changing people's minds. Maybe Sargon, but it sounds like she's referring to his earlier career. He didn't debate Sargon for the first time till he was already quite sizably large on YouTube.
Led to him growing his audience quite a bit, and I left the conversation with the impression that clout, not these conversations, were his actual focus. It turned me off, so I no longer spoke to him. It's clear that we had vastly different priorities. I know that there are people reading this post who are going to walk away with the conclusion that this post is yet again more evidence of my obsession with him. However, I'm not writing this because I'm obsessed. I'm not even particularly writing this to call him out. For me...
Okay. I'll take your word for it, Kat. That's all I'll say. Listen, whether or not you guys think Kat Blaque is obsessed with Vaush or not is completely up to you. The evidence is out there. Who's talked about who the most and said the most about who the most is out there? I'll let you put that all together on your own.
Me, there was a bigger lesson here and an aha moment I think I've needed to have for a while. This incident woke me up in a very profound way. Often, when you're the only minority in a space, it becomes hard for you to advocate for yourself without doing it in a way that doesn't isolate you from those around you. You internalize the obvious discomfort people have with you and what you know their assumptions of you are, and you want to try very hard to be, as I said, one of the good ones. If you care to be accepted in that...
There it is. There it is. She brought it all back around. Didn't I tell you in the beginning that she was going to compare her experiences as a woman of color in broader society, being forced to conform in professional environments to a very white normative idea of what it is to be professional or to be to behave in a certain way. She is going to try to compare being one of the good ones in our racist society to, I guess, her not having done all of this psychotic shit towards Vaush. I knew, and I called it out from the fucking beginning, she was gonna bring it all back around to Vaush and compare it to fucking Vaush. That is fantastic.
Space, you start making a habit of doubting yourself and you don't want to immediately rush to judgment. This means when you hear or see bigoted stuff, you have a way of downplaying it or not immediately reacting to it. You're aware that these people are terrified of being called a bigot and you don't want to be one of those black people that judges them and dismisses them. You intrinsically feel this emotion and you struggle to...
How do you live with the gift of prophecy? I see all things.
Make boundaries for yourself because you want to be accepted. What this frequently means is tolerating what you absolutely shouldn't for the exchange of belonging to a group of people who you know already look down on you because they put you under this pressure. As a black person who spent most of their life in non-black spaces, I've constantly tried to avoid being seen as a thug or an easily angered mammy. That very intense pressure not to step out of line to defend yourself, even when justified, has a way of passive...
There it is. She feels the same pressure. She feels like the pressure from society to act white is the same as the pressure from Vaush's community to be a little bit reasonable and not accuse him of being racist or sexist or transphobic without literally any ability to support the argument whatsoever. Clearly, these are comparable things. Clearly, this isn't a disgusting downplaying of the, let's be real. Okay, I'm a white dude, so I'm not the person to go to hear a comprehensive discussion about this issue. Please go watch a creator who knows more about this, period, than me, regardless of their race, but especially if they're black, about this issue. But yeah, white normativity, I believe is the term for it, is basically the bog standard necessity of what you need to sort of conform to if you're going to be a black person in a professional setting. Like, even though a lot of things that are typically associated with being black are fine and okay, they're still very negatively viewed, especially in majority white, high income, wealthy settings. And so there is this, at the very least, implicit push and more commonly an overt and obvious push to make black people act white. Very common example of this is in schools. When I was younger, dreadlocks weren't allowed. Dreadlocks were against dress code. Just a lot of black hairstyles when I was a kid back in Florida were against dress code. Like, basically every black student in the class had to, like, conform to a very few specific set of basic hairstyles that would be acceptable. Like, a lot of, like, if you were a black dude in my school, like, you would be sent to the principal's office and you'd have to get, like, a haircut because your haircut was too distracting if you didn't basically have, like, a very, very short fade. And if you were a black woman in the class, long braids, anything like that, no, not allowed. Too distracting for that. Shit like that is a real problem. And it starts as young as childhood and goes all the way up to the fucking business world. All right? The idea of comparing that to this Twitter drama, to me, is disgusting.
Find you in situations where you should be able to draw boundaries for yourself. It's like when I was living in a white suburb in Orange County and white women would walk up to me in the supermarket and put their dirty fingers in my hair without asking. In those situations...
Oh, hey, here's a good example. Here's an example of exactly what I'm talking about. Only Kat Blaque is trying to compare this to Twitter drama, which is hilarious.
I must decide if I want to smile while they violate my personal space or have the natural reaction where I flinch and say, "Fuck you, get your hands out of my hair." If I did the same to a white woman and touched her hair without asking, she'd think I was a weirdo. Hell, she might even call the cops, but by virtue of my blackness and how alien I am in those spaces, I'm expected to tolerate it, and saying no would make me uppity. Suddenly then I'd become the...
That is a real issue. White people do need to stop touching black people's hair. Stop doing that. Seriously, don't do that. Stop. Don't even ask, okay? It is weird to ask someone to touch their hair, okay? You know how if you want to touch someone's hair, you better be getting fucked, okay? Or you better be fucking them, okay? Consensually, all right? Then you can touch their hair if they're into it. There are a lot of girls like having their hair pulled, okay? It's a thing.
The rude one for not allowing her to touch my hair. Even though I was being violated, the conversation would shift towards managing their emotions and making sure they knew that I wasn't upset or offended. Yes, these things would happen to me all the time when I lived deep in Trump country with my ex. They always bought...
I'm a massage therapist, sir. I can ask black women that. Well, Legend of Sean, most of us are not massage therapists, okay? I'm quite the pro massager myself. I used to go around, find random women, just massage them on the street without any permission. They used to call me the misogynistic. Pretty cool.
Bothered me, but I often struggled to say no. So usually, I wouldn't pull back and say what I wanted to say. I would nod my head, allow them to violate my boundaries, and go back to my shopping, because that was the safer response. I've learned that many white people react very negatively when you draw these sorts of boundaries. When you solidly say no, a lot of them cannot process it without hearing an accusation in the subtext. You can see that at several points in my...
Do you guys remember when Vaush single-handedly founded chattel slavery? That's the part they leave out of our school books. Do you remember or when Vaush's art ended up beating Hitler's art in that art contest, which made Hitler quit art school and become Hitler? That was also Vaush's fault. The Armenian genocide, I don't know much about it, but Vaush was responsible for that one too. Genghis Khan and all of the pillaging he did. Vaush was just right there with them, hanging out on a horse, just riding around like, yeah, we should go pillage some cities. Let's go. Imperial Japan, Vaush was right there like, hey, you know, let's not surrender. No surrender, all right? Listen to me. Do not surrender to America. Vaush was there telling Imperial Japan not to surrender. That was his fault too. Right there, Vaush was there with Stalin saying, hey, you need to confiscate all the food and grain from the Ukrainians, and you do that. Vaush was responsible for the Holodomor. Vaush even told Putin to invade Ukraine so that he could do a charity stream about the invasion and make a bunch of money off of it. In the coverage, too. That was him as well. To be fair, there are probably a non-zero amount of Kat Blaque fans who believe one or two of those things is legitimately true.
Interaction with Vaush. Like I said, when I first saw dirtbag leftist content, I was told by many people not to outright dismiss it. Like a white woman scraping my scalp because she felt entitled to my body, even though the bias was obvious. I was encouraged not to react naturally to it. If I'm being honest, I guess I became far too invested in proving to my audience that I wasn't that angry black woman avatar that so many people were saying I was. The fear of appearing that way made it so that I tolerated disrespect in a way I shouldn't have, and I was slow to properly draw a boundary between myself and work that obviously antagonized.
To make it clear, by the way, if Kat Blaque's response to that white woman was then to just, like, smack the shit out of her, I would defend Kat Blaque 100% in that. Like, 100,000,000%. Once someone's laid their hands on you, you're allowed to go all hands, I think. I am fully of the belief that once somebody has laid their hands on you without your consent, you're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want to defend yourself. And if that means a firm punch, smack, knee, whatever it needs to be to get that person off of you, I think it's justified. And if that's what Kat Blaque had done to that white woman, I would have been... Frankly, if I'd seen it, I probably would have been like... Yeah, that would have been my reaction, and I would have defended her. Like, I'm not here to defend societal racism. I want to make that very clear. The things that she is calling out right now, such as, like, the way that society pushes a lot of black people to be more white, essentially, I guess, that these are real issues. My problem here is that Kat Blaque is trying to equate that to Vaush, period.
Me. What stood out to me in this conversation is that from this altercation to my YouTube career generally, I've tried my best not to be seen as one of the bad ones, but I still was. I cannot overstate the amount of work that's gone into me carefully peeling over every word and how I said it and the tone in which it was said, and how that very process derailed a lot of my progress as a creator. I've wasted years of my life constructing my work around potential misunderstandings. I watered down my messages to placate to the egos of people who were barely listening to me to begin with. Perhaps it flattered them, but it left me feeling depleted. I guess I really didn't want to accept that certain people were always going to see me a certain way because of who I am. This may sound ironic because of the work I do, but I have, to some degree, always struggled with the idea that someone would simply dismiss me because of my race or gender. Maybe it's all of those years I've spent being accepted conditionally because of how much I played into respectability politics. But it's hard for me.
Okay. All respect is conditional. To a degree. Okay? How much do you respect a random person you saw walking down the street past you? Well, I assume you probably have a neutral level of respect for them, about as much respect as you have for any other stranger, like just a basic level of human respect. Like if they dropped their wallet, maybe you'd pick it up and hand it to them. I would, you know, I'd be that's the kind of human respect I have for everybody. But do I have the same level of respect for that person as I do for, I don't know, like... Hell, ContraPoints. Somebody who I am at a current disagreement with, I guess. ContraPoints. A lot of respect for her. Way more respect for ContraPoints than some random person on the street. Zizek. Yeah, Zizek. Way more respect for him than any random person I'd see on the street. More respect for Vaush than any random person I'd see on the street. More respect for even, I don't know, fucking... Kesha than any random person I'd see on the street. And that is because these people have all done things in their lives that, at least in my view, have made them more worthy of respect. People do things that like make them worthy of respect. Now, it feels as though she's suggesting that the respect she receives is conditional because of race. The respect you receive as an online figure, period, is based on your actions, okay? Hold on. Are there any popular, like, are any of the most, like, okay, the most hated people on the internet, the most made fun of, despised, biggest lolcows on the internet that I can think of are Chris Chan, Wings of Redemption, and DSP. White people. Clearly, it's not a race thing. If you do things that don't garner respect from others... Darkside Phil is DSP. If you do things that cause people to disrespect you or to not want to respect you, they're not going to respect you. It's not your race that's making people on the left not respect you anymore, Kat. It's what you've said and done. I don't care about your identity at the end of the day. Like, really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The arguments that you're making are stupid. And that's what made me lose respect for you. Not who you are, not your civility or whatever. It's your actions, your beliefs, and your behavior. These are the things that have caused me to lose respect for you. And frankly, your inability to apologize for the things you've objectively done wrong.
Me to understand how people could look at me and see me as an unfaithful narrator. I am not the kind of person who enjoys believing that I have certain limitations in life because of who I am. Though I speak so much about oppression, I suppose how I've moved through the world has let me very subconsciously feel as though what happens to other black or transgender people wouldn't happen to me because of how I am. I feel a pit in my stomach acknowledging this, but I think acknowledging this thought in the back of my mind is central to unpacking it. I didn't want to immediately believe that when someone disliked my content, it was because I'm black or transgender. But after 16 years of being transformed into an angry black caricature by others, it's very hard for me to...
Did you guys know Vaush fucked Margaret Thatcher's mom and conceived her? Margaret Thatcher is actually Vaush's daughter and would not exist if it weren't for Vaush. All Vaush's fault, once again.
Deny that this is often the case. I have finally come to embrace that there isn't a version of me, nor a way of phrasing my criticisms of oppression that will ever be universally embraced or faithfully understood. No matter how politely I phrase it, there are going to be people who read what I say with a subtext of anger and malice that simply does not exist within me. I've made the mistake of believing that was my fault, but it's just a reflection of the system we live in. It was wrong for me to buy into this idea that I could shift white supremacist thought by simply adhering to a white supremacist outline of the sort of person I should be. I see that now. I must also accept that there are many people who see that I have a platform that sustains me who will believe that I do not deserve it because of who I am. So much of the bullshit
I don't give a shit about whether or not she deserves her platform, for the record.
gotten has had the subtext of how dare she have what she does.
Whether or not I believe she deserves the platform she has no real effect. I've moved past that a long time ago. Something you'll have to get... Okay, advice to any aspiring content creators out there. Horrible, horrible pieces of shit will always be above you, no matter how big you get. People like Rice Gum, people like the Paul Brothers, people like J Station, people like Keemstar, people that are just like the objectively like biggest pieces of shit out there. There are going to be people like that will always have a platform larger than you, more success than you. And you're just going to eventually have to learn to deal with it and not let it bother you. Because their success does not affect you at all. Their happiness, their success, whether or not they even are happy, affects you nada. Nothing. Not at all. In no way does it affect you if you don't let it. So don't let it. Or try not to let it. It's not as simple, easier said than done, but try not to let it.
When Phil DeFranco made content about me being a supposed black supremacist, because YouTube has directly supported me a handful of times, they tried to get the attention of the CEO of the company to alert them that I do not deserve such support because of the beliefs they believe I have. I guess in the back of my mind, I would have assumed that bloggers like him wouldn't so easily buy into these false narratives about me. But that assumption is based on the amount of credence I likely give these creators.
Wait, Philip DeFranco reached out to the CEO of YouTube to blacklist Kat Blaque because he thought she was anti-white? I don't know if his reasoning back then was correct, but maybe he was right for the wrong reasons. How is that even verifiable? I don't even know, actually. Also, Phil has moved on a lot of opinions he used to have. Nah, if that's true and it was completely wrong and it was Phil being a piece of a dumb fuck again, like he was the New York Times thing, he should apologize for it. He's a news guy. His credibility and whether or not what comes out of his mouth is to be trusted as news is kind of important to his job, isn't it? You kind of have he's apologized and gone back on stories before to correct things. He hasn't on this because either he's unaware, doesn't care, or has too much hair.
Based on nothing more than how I've been socialized to see whiteness. I think a lot of white creators do not intrinsically understand that a function of white supremacy is that most people will look at a white person and see them as a blank slate whose ideas stand on their own. Sure, if you're alternative or visibly queer in some way, people will make assumptions of you, but not in the way—
That's actually kind of true, that whiteness is seen as sort of like the default in American society, but I don't know what that has to do with the ideas.
They'll make assumptions of me. As I said, I've heard things like "you're so well-spoken" all throughout my life. I must speak well, dress respectably, and phrase everything I say in a
Sorry, I don't know what it has to do with the ideas in the lefty online space, in our little woke cocoon of a community that we're all arguing inside of.
Docile tone for a wider audience to be receptive to what I'm saying. What I've struggled with is that mainstream frequently means having to engage in that sort of respectability, and what I've really struggled with is the reality of how much that doesn't align with who I am. People who have followed me since I've moved to Los Angeles have seen me slowly but surely shift my online persona towards something that feels more genuine to me and that has been incredibly freeing. For me, this lesson was one of the last ones I've needed to come into myself as a creator. I've learned through my experiences that no matter how I present myself or how much I assimilate, there will always be people who immediately look at me and already believe their assumptions of me. I've wasted too—
I love it. She can just just shrug off any and all valid criticism by saying, "Oh, well, it's all racist. It's all just because I'm not I'm not acting white enough for them. I'm not engaging in their respectability politics they need me to. Any and all criticism avoided." That right there, real life exploit, breaking the system. We gotta patch that one.
Much of my life believing that there was something I could do to shift that impression outside of being so docile that I don't stand up for myself. I don't think it's a coincidence that so many of the situations where people have hyper-focused on my less than polite words—
Critical thinking 100, yeah—
have been instances where I've been standing up for myself. As a self-critical person, I can acknowledge my own isms in some of the things I've said and done and see them as negative and unhelpful. At the same time, I recognize how much more freedom white creators get to be rude in the face of disrespect. Respectability politics very subtly—
This is true, by the way. I will give Kat Blaque, just because she, even if in this example she's wrong, she is correct about the broad trend of cis white male creators can get away with so much more than a trans woman of color could. If a trans woman of color went on a loud rant shitting on like conservatives, it would be made into a compilation for reactionaries to laugh at. But when a dude goes on a screamy rant about women being evil, it becomes a meme. And even people who don't necessarily agree with it still like, they make fun of it, but in a way that's not anywhere as mean as they would the alternative, right? There is a very obvious bias there that exists, but it's not relevant to what we're talking about here with Vaush.
It teaches you that creating boundaries for yourself.
The best way to tell lies is to mix a little bit of bullshit into those lies. Or sorry, to mix a little bit of the truth into the lies. The more lies you can dilute into the truth without it being like called out, the better. And that's what she's doing here. Like, there is a lot of truth here. She is giving good commentary about racism in America and how it can be hard to, you know, live as a Black woman of color, especially if you're trans in America. But then she also intertwines that with her extremely spiteful, personally, grudge motivated attacks against another content creator. Half truth is stronger than a lie. Yep.
Or even simply saying fuck off makes you one of those people. The more you meditate on it, the more you recognize that respectability politics are constructed to keep you in a position where you never quite get to accurately describe harm, where you never get to be justifiably angry or frustrated by the things that harm you. It has a way of telling you to temper your pain and placate to people who are already struggling with the idea that you're taking up space to begin with. When I broke down in my video about Leftu being so white, that was the exact emotion that broke through. The frustration with the fact that I cannot simply just say that I am scared and be trusted. I must politely dance and show fancy graphics that explain the exact reasons why I deserve to be. I hadn't processed that the very premise of having a conversation like that requires that I debase myself and put myself in a position where I am essentially begging for.
The sad thing is it's like, what if she's not lying? It's so much sadder if she's not lying, isn't it? It's so sad if she genuinely feels emotionally distressed whenever content creators on the left start to get big that engage in any popular tactics that are successful that she doesn't like, that she genuinely feels so emotionally upset about this that she feels the need to speak out about it. That would, like, the idea of the left winning actually causes her so much emotional turmoil that she has to speak out against it. Like, that's actually a sadder and more depressing possibility than this all being her just on a spite-fueled rampage against Vaush. The idea that she genuinely feels distress when the left does well. The left's greatest enemy is itself, after all? I suppose it is.
For the privilege in my audience to hear me. It is inherently demeaning. When you play into that, it puts you into a perpetual position of frustration because these people were already barely listening to what you had to say. So when they still do not hear it, you feel exhausted by the labor you've wasted. That's what was happening to me, and I still hadn't let go of that toxic and untenable cycle. I can confidently say that your average white creator is unaware that Black creators must do this all the time to get even a quarter of what they have. When I think of why so many of the Black transgender women I've known on YouTube haven't become more successful, it's because they haven't been doing this. Looking at my own platform, I can see more clearly that I probably have the following I do because I've entertained respectability politics through most of my career. However, what this situation taught me is that when it all comes down to it, that doesn't work. Vaush.
That's not true. Plenty of content creators that don't engage in respectability politics. And hold on. If we're going to talk about respectability politics and we're going to talk about like discussions of race, I mean, hell, let's talk about Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's like commentary on race, especially back in the day, is pretty funny and pretty damn based. I mean, like he did do the Clayton Bigsby sketch and like low key kind of acknowledge the idea that a Black person could be a white supremacist, which is unfortunately a reality that we now exist in 2022. And that is very common and not really like a joke anymore like it was. I don't think it was ever really just a joke, but I mean, like, Dave Chappelle never, ever engaged in respectability politics, and all of his racial humor is like some of the most lauded and loved like racial humor there is. Am I wrong? Is there anybody who did racial humor better than, like, in the minds of most people than Dave Chappelle? Old Dave Chappelle. I'm talking about the Chappelle Show. Not his current Netflix specials and his weird current political engagement.
Would later be receptive and welcoming to a transgender blogger who made the same exact argument I made in my original post that upset him so much. Would it surprise you if I told you that she was white? I feel incredibly stupid giving Vaush and his ilk any degree of my energy or consideration. I regret seeing these tactics as valid enough to understand. Had I listened to my intuition, I would have dismissed him the first time I saw the bigotry and moved forward. I would not have been curious about his tactics, and I wouldn't have pondered his approach. I would have said that seems racist, transphobic, misogynistic, trusted my gut, and simply moved forward. The upsetting question I've been asking myself is how much consideration would I have given him if he was
Vaush and his ilk. It's that when she says that, you should all be visualizing that image where it's just the army of bearded white guys with man buns saying, "We are Legion."
A white man, was trying to make sense of what was clearly so disagreeable to me, a reflex that I had because he's a white man. I think I've dismissed POC leftists for much less. I can sit here and pontificate about how frequently he's been able to get away with saying terrible things to people. But that would be repetitive. I already knew why, but I doubted my perception. My frustration was based in this idea that we were both equally considered for our ideas and arguments, but that was naive. Now, I no longer doubt my own understanding. I clearly see the reasons he and other bloggers like him get to be the sort of person they are, while I am given less leeway. This experience was frustrating, but I am so thankful for the clarity it's brought me. I've learned to stop attempting to placate to the emotions of people who need to be convinced I'm not who they've already assumed I was. I thought I had grown out of that habit, but when I reflect on my experiences, I realize that this is still a subconscious part of the way I approach these conversations. It's clear I still have unpacking to do. However, as our world becomes darker and the rights of transgender people are fought against so viciously, it does not serve me to neuter my arguments with pleasantries and a degree of consideration I am never given. I'm not going to feel bad for dismissing someone outright for engaging in behavior that is obviously antagonistic towards me. I am still a great thinker and someone who doesn't think linearly, but I will no
Gotta incorporate some real-world issues in order to make your sob story seem more valid and not like you're just fishing for attention and sympathy.
longer allow those thoughts to be informed by a subconscious desire to be one of the good ones.
Well, there it is. She pulled from all of this that we want her to be one of the good ones. That is what she got from all of this. Isn't that nice to hear? Yeah, isn't it depressing to find out that all these figures that we once took seriously, talking about these really complicated and nuanced political issues, are so completely incapable of understanding very basic arguments and are incapable of functioning in even the slightest bit of when even the slightest bit of turmoil happens in their interpersonal relationships? Like, doesn't it like worry you when these figures that like we're supposed to like take seriously when they talk about like important political issues can't even manage an interpersonal relationship without acting like a fucking high schooler? Is that maybe like a little bit concerning to you guys? Because it should be. It really should be. Like, people who behave this way should not be listened to about complicated political topics, okay? At least not entirely, and not like at face value. Watch my stream instead. No, in reality, do your own research for real, but like not the kind that conservatives tell you to do. Like, actually look at what reputable organizations and like orgs from like you know, universities, academic institutions, you know, government institutions that do independent studies and research. Listen to what these reputable outlets say, and what the academic consensus on an issue says before you listen to what a YouTuber has to say, okay? But you can fairly reliably bank on me repeating whatever the reputable smart people have to say, so you don't have to go do that searching yourself too much. Or you can, and I just repackage all that info in a more entertaining bottle. It's up to you. Anyway, that is really all I can say about this. I don't have much more commentary I can give, frankly. I can't believe we finished it, but fucking hell. Holy Christ. If you all enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, both on the stream and on this segment if you're watching it after it's gone up as its own video on YouTube. It really does help the channel more than you realize. YouTube values likes and community engagement more than ever now. And the like-to-view ratio on a video being higher is what really makes a video do better in the algorithm. More likes means more algorithm fuel for the video in the channel. So liking the videos, liking the streams, just generally dropping those likes completely free, takes half a second, really helps out the channel more than you realize. So I really do appreciate any of you who do that. If you want to support me financially, you can do so by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or you can support me on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or through Patreon if you choose. And finally, you can follow my social medias, linked down in the description below of my stream and of the videos, or of the video, including my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and finally, the most exciting one, my fan Discord. All right, hear me out, guys. I am building an army, okay? I am building a fucking army in Rust. We are building legions, okay? Right now, here, let me hop in the VC, deafened and muted. Look at this. This is the Rust Friends VC. Up here is the Rust Apply text chat. If you would like to play Rust with me, a fantastic video game that I've been playing with all my friends. You want to play Rust with me, hang out in VC, and generally have a fun time with one of your favorite content creators, dominating a Rust server, owning Nazis, and spreading the good word of leftism to all the people of the Rust server? Go drop an application in the Rust apply area. I want as many people as possible. You don't have to be a donator. You don't have to be a sub, anything like that. Just go leave your application there. I'll give you the role that'll allow you access to the Rust Friends text chat and the Rust Friends VC that has everything else you need to get on there. But if you're any of you who are watching are interested in Rust, have Rust, or are Rust players or anything, definitely hit that shit up. I'm going to be playing Rust as soon as stream ends, so hop on there with me if you want to play with me. It's going to be pog as fuck. I've been having so much fun playing this game. I don't even think you guys realize. So definitely join my fan Discord because I want to do a lot more stuff like playing video games with you guys, like just getting as many people as possible in one game together and just like building an army of my fans to dominate a server in some game or something. That kind of shit feels so fun to do. So if you want to be a part of that kind of stuff, hop in my fan Discord. And yeah, with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for the support and have a good one.